Mig, I miss you.
I miss you too. Miss everybody there, but I'll be back in New York pretty soon, and we'll get the band back together.
Something tells me that in the time you've been at Oaklawn Park, you've had more pizza than you did your entire riding career.
Well, Duluth is the go-to, no doubt. You know what? I've become a bit of a connoisseur, an aficionado, is barbecue down here. And everywhere I go, because I go off exploring, I go hiking, I find a barbecue spot, and I got to try it. Right near the track, Blue Ember for the ribs, best.
There you go. Well, let's get into this horse, Sandman. He's a horse that I've been on record a couple of times of just saying I think he's going to be overbet. And I think he's going to be overbet because he's one of those horses that deserves the attention he's getting. He's had trouble in a lot of starts, and then he has this big, late, flashy run. But, Mig, let's just talk about closers in the Derby in general. How do you feel about closers in the Kentucky Derby, just considering the field size and the distance?
Well, that's the difficulty. If you're on a closer, it's a 20-horse field, and in a situation where nobody's your friend. You know, in the Kentucky Derby, nobody gives any quarter. You're going to earn every piece of real estate that you're able to gain. So obviously he needs racing luck, right? And be able to negotiate his way through a big field. I thought the Arkansas Derby was a good dress rehearsal. Obviously not as big a field as the Kentucky Derby. And he got a very, very fast pace to help set up his late run, which certainly enhances his style. But historically in the Kentucky Derby, you get that kind of pace. Then, you know, it's up to Jose Ortiz, who maybe nobody's riding better in the country, except maybe his brother, Irad and Jose, you know, to work out that trip.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that you would, as a rider who's been in situations where you've gotten a setup, I think sometimes I would imagine you would disagree at times that it's just that simple. Oh, they got a setup. They won because they got a setup. There's still a lot of other variables that come into the situation of the race of getting a horse to run down horses in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I guess it can be easy to dismiss a horse's effort because, yes, it played into their strength. But, you know, he made a long sustained run, which I think bodes well for him for the Kentucky Derby. Think about the horses that win derbies. Either they're, you know, just a super kind of freaky speed horse that can carry it. You know, we can go back Seattle Slew on and on and on. Or they can make a long sustained run, which he did in the Arkansas Derby. So I think that bodes well for him. Or you have that rare individual that can make two distinct runs, a run up into position, idle a bit, get a breather, and then kick on again. He's already shown the ability to make that long sustained run. And in the Arkansas Derby, when he hit the front, I thought he lost focus. He had never been in front that early in a race, at least not since he was a 2-year-old. And he kind of got to wander, and you could see Jose Ortiz went at him left-handed. He ducked out. He had to straighten him up. That, to me, was a lack of focus because he's used to having something to chase. I think he's going to get a very similar kind of setup in the Derby, maybe not quite as fast a pace, but it's 1.25 miles, and he's one of a handful of horses in this Derby field that I feel confident that will stay the 10 furlongs.
Mig, I always like to ask you this. It's one of my favorite things to ask you when we're working together on the Fox Sports show, America's Day at the Races or Saratoga Live, is well, which one would you like to ride? Because I know that you look at fields in two different ways as an analyst. You look at them as, okay, who am I going to talk about from a handicapping standpoint to help the bettors on some good ideas here? And then I know your mind quickly goes back to that riding career, that champion riding career, that Hall of Fame worthy riding career of who would I like to ride? And this Kentucky Derby, who would that be?
It would be journalism, without a doubt. You know, I respect Sandman. I respect a few others. He just, from a jockey's perspective, he's not slow, but he's not forced into a pace scenario. He should get some position. You got to think he's going to have at least half the field behind him early, less traffic to negotiate. And I like the way he jumps back in the bridle. You know, his last start, he had trouble in the Santa Anita Derby. And every time he gets stopped, instantly he jumped back in the bridle. That's a rare ability for a horse. You know, very handy. And the start before, even though he didn't have trouble, he found another gear at the 8th pole. He's the horse. If I could ride one, that'd be the one.
Mike, I was going to have someone on to tell me why they liked Grande, but I figured who better to tell me why we should like Grande than Mike Repole.
Thanks, JK. We're excited. I mean, the last couple of years we've gone into this with the favorite, which is a lot more stressful than coming in with probably a 20-1 morning line. But, this is the type of horse that we're excited about for a couple of reasons. 3 starts, numbers are getting better on every time form or that we're looking at. And, he is a curlin. We all know curlins get better with age, experience, and distance. And this one's gets a little older, gets another start, and he's got a little more distance. And what we really like about him, both Todd and I, is he's got tactical speed. Usually curlins are not up close. In his first start, he broke from the 1 post, got a lot of experience, and beat a really, really nice horse that came back and won. His second start, going 2 turns, he passed that test. And we shipped him in the Wood Memorial. And, we needed a first or second to get in this race. And, first quarter of a mile, I canceled my trip to Kentucky. And by the time the phone rang on the other side, I saw him making a move. He broke slow, step behind. And, he was wide the entire time. Johnny rode him the first 2 times. Dylan rode him this time. And, I joked with Dylan, even though Dylan did a great job of getting him back into the race and winning second, that, we gave him a 1.25 mile race at the Wood Memorial when it was really 1 1/8 miles. And I love the way he was just, digging in, galloped out great. And, he's a curlin with a Warfront mare, out of a Warfront mare, which is, sometimes a little turfy, but, Churchill is a funny track. Sometimes those, horses that like turf kind of like the surface and the distance. So, JK, not having the favorite and coming in at 25-1 and feeling like you have a shot is a lot more fun than having a heavy favorite and not sleeping for 5 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd imagine you're sleeping a little bit better than you did the last 2 years.
Oh, so much better. It's, with Forte and Fierceness, both winning the Florida Derby. I remember saying the day before, if Fierceness and Forte don't win the Florida Derby, it's going to be a really, really tough 24 hours. And if they win it, it's going to be a really, really tough 5 weeks. And it really was for both of them. And I'm going in with this one with a fighter's chance, and, a horse that might be in the top, 7 to 10 in the field, which I see a lot of speed. And I don't know, JK, you're the handicapper if you see that. And they always go fast in the Derby, right? And we got a shot. And, it's exciting.
I'll tell you one thing I like about Grande. When I did a video a little earlier, one of my long shot plays, the thing I like about him is if you think Rodriguez ran well in a wire-to-wire performance, anytime a horse is closing into a wire-to-wire winner, I always give them an upgrade because obviously the pace was good, was slow enough for the horse on the front end to stick around. So a horse who's closing into that, I always upgrade him a little bit. And he's lightly raced and he's done nothing wrong. A lot of times when you have a long shot, you have these horses that are just dirty form. A couple thirds here, a couple of sevenths there. He just is really just not very exposed. I think he's very live, especially coming from the Todd Pletcher barn.
No, I'm glad, JK, you said that because last year you picked Fierceness and he came in 15th. So hopefully you just like him as a long shot. But I'll give you $1,000 not to bet him if you want that, if that's okay.
But you know what? Deal. But you know what though? I was right about Fierceness. I was just wrong on the day. Yeah. I was wrong on the day.
Yeah, listen, we all know the best horse doesn't always win that day. And, Fierceness came back and he proved you right in the Jim Dandy, he proved you right in the Travers. And probably the best race of his life was the Breeders' Cup Classic for him to go 22-44 and 109 and still lose by a length and a half in second place. And he's training great, by the way. And, he could be, this could be a little we're thinking about that Derby weekend as a spot or the Westchester. We haven't made up our mind yet, but he's going to, the big target is the Met Mile, but he's going to get a prep, in 2 weeks somewhere.
Well, we can't wait to see the blue and orange. And I guess I should just double check with you. How many people are you bringing to this one?
Thank God only 70. How's that sound? So 70, but I'm glad there are some communions that day. People are getting married and going away. So I said, no problem. It just saves me a lot more money when there's 30 less people.
That sounds expensive. Mike, we appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, JK.
Mike, well, you've won the Derby 2 times, and both in completely different fashions, right? You had Justify, who was up there tracking the pace all the way around there, and then you had Giacomo, who came from way out of it, and you had to do your best weaving and bobbing and weaving job down the stretch. Which one of those 2 rides do you prefer of the 2?
Well, I mean, they were both. I mean, I did my job both days, man. So I did well both days on those 2 occasions, anyway. So, but it's always fun coming from way back. When you come from way back and you can weave in and out of crowds and you either get through on the fence or split horses and stuff like that. That's always a bit funner. Justify was just naturally much quicker, man, and he left the gate so good. And it's always easier when you have a horse that does that. You don't have to worry about the traffic or getting behind a wall of horses that stop in front of you, or horses shutting you off or bouncing you around. And so it's certainly a whole lot easier whenever you have tactical speed like Rodriguez does.
Something tells me that if you win the Derby with Rodriguez, it won't be like Giacomo coming from way out of it. Talk a little bit about the Wood Memorial. It was your first time on Rodriguez. I've told you this personally. My favorite thing to do is see Mike Smith on the lead. And you did that with Rodriguez. You put him out there on the front end. You let him get comfortable, and you did what you've done so many times with good horses on the front end.
Yeah, thank you. I'd watch him break his maiden, and he broke his maiden really impressive. So you knew there was some talent there. And then you see his last 2 prep races before the Wood, you wouldn't pick him for your Derby horse with those two preps, but they were kind of taking him out of his game. He had a little bit of a blinker on, and Bob had 2 others in there with speed as well. And they were trying, one of them's got to ease back, and they thought he'd be the one that could do it. And he just didn't care for it. He's a bit like his father, he was a bit still green at the time and didn't care for them grabbing him and the kickback and all. And Bob removed the blinkers, told me he's still going to be quick, warm him up and listen, ride him like you want to, but just jump out of there and then see where that puts him, and man, he warmed up so good that day and he left there so good, Jonathan. I just left him up there, man. You can see the difference in his body language between his last 2 prep races and in the Wood. He's so comfortable going around the first turn and so happy going down the backside. I knew he was going to run big. And they came at him early, so I thought, well, this is going to prove now if he really belongs. And not only did he withstand that early move, he finished with something left. So he was really impressive.
Now, Mike, I think a lot of questions for all these horses, are they going to handle the 1.25 miles? And for some reason, the speed horses get that question a little bit more, which I think is kind of silly. I think closers can have a problem getting 1.25 miles as well. But what is your feel? I think that riders obviously have the best perspective. You sat on his back. What is your feel on how he'll handle any added distance?
The way he pulled up after the Wood, Jonathan, really made me. That's another thing that really made me feel good was he wasn't weary-legged. Had to stand there for a second or 2 to catch his breath before he turned around and came back. I mean, the outrider literally had to grab him and had to help me pull him up. And he came back with a lot of energy. So that makes me feel that he should definitely get an extra 1/8 of a mile anyway. He could have on that day. Of course, the pace will be different, and of course the race and the track surface will be different. But I mean, he handled the 1.8 miles really, really well. I watched him work the other morning, and his gallop out was tremendous. As a matter of fact, if you'll be more impressed with the gallop out than you will the actual work. So that just makes me feel that he should get the 1.25 miles.
Mike, the obvious interesting dynamic is that as a rider, you've got kind of 2 clients that you're working for, right? You're working for the owners and you're working for the trainer. And sometimes the trainer will have 2 in the race, but different ownerships. It can be a little tricky. There's 2 horses in this race. They're going to have pretty similar styles. You and Citizen Bull, both trained by Bob Baffert and both owned by the SF Matikit et al. Group that has all these good colts. do you have any idea what you think is going to happen in that situation? Whether you feel like you're going to just end up riding your own race? Do you think you're going to have some instructions from the group on where they plan to send you or send the other one? Do you have any thoughts there?
I think some of that will depend on the draw too as well, Jonathan. Once they draw, you can kind of get to see where everyone's at. But listen, I think they're going to let us ride our race. I know Bob already told me, man. He's yours, man. You go out there and have fun, and so I'm not going to take away nothing that comes easy to him. He's naturally quick. You hope you jump well, and he'll be forward. I think he just really needs to be in a rhythm, Jonathan, and just left alone. Just let him be happy, and I think he'll run well for wherever that's at. But I mean, if someone wants to be in front of him, they're going to have to probably run pretty quick to do it.
I've loved hearing you talk about that, where you've talked about with a speed horse, just dropping your hands and just letting them get comfortable. And I've told you this before. You're the one who's kind of taught me that sometimes it's better for a fast horse to go faster than it is for a fast horse to go slower early in the race. When you won forward from the 7, would you prefer with a speed horse like this to be a little bit further out? I mean, I know you can't control that, but would you prefer to be further out than the 7 that you won with Justify?
Yeah, that again, that just depends on where the other speed's at, where they draw. It just depends. Listen, the draw's not as a big deal now with the new gate that it used to be, John. Man, I mean, before, man, you were really worried about drawing the 1, 2, 3 because you're literally pointing out the inside rail. You have to kind of go right to get clear, and if you got away just a step slow, man, you wind up out the back half the time. Now with the new gate, it's not as a big a deal. No one ever really wants the 1 just because you're sitting there so long and you're forced to either. Seems like you either got to go or you have to take back, and sometimes you have to take farther back than what you wanted to. But sometimes a bad post turns into a really good one, and I've certainly had that happen before as well. So I think good horses kind of overcome that kind of stuff, but yeah, you want to draw somewhere out in the middle, somewhere out where you could be comfortable and clear, and not forced to have to do something that you really don't want to do early. So you certainly want to draw anywhere from, I would say, the 7 on out.
Mike, I'm convinced that you got another one in you. So I hope it's this one. We wish you the best of luck. Safe trips around there.
Amen. Thank you, buddy. Let's from your mouth to God's ears, man. Let's do it.
When you're involved in horse racing and you meet people from the outside world, what they want to know is, have you ever had a runner in the Kentucky Derby? And it's almost a joke to people in the game because there's like a million other races and very few make the Kentucky Derby. However, there is an owner who hasn't been involved in the game for that long, who had a horse in the Kentucky Derby last year. He's got a horse in the Kentucky Derby this year again. Jayson Werth, welcome to the show. How are things, my friend?
No, they're crazy. We're here at Keeneland today, enjoying a delayed opening weekend. But yeah, we're going back to Churchill for the first Saturday in May for the second year in a row. And I actually I kid around with people and I tell them that I guess it would have been 3 years ago now when Mage won. We actually somehow, long story, but we ended up in one of the winter circle suites for Derby Day. We got lucky. We got part of a group that bought one of the suites, right place, right time. So we were in the winter circle suites for when Mage won, and owning Dornoch, we felt like we won. And then the next year we go, and we're in the first suite. The year before we were in the 20th suite, and now here we are with Flying Mohawk, a $70,000 turf horse that we had aspirations of going to Kentucky Downs and, going to hanging out in Nashville and going to the races there. And here we are, run second in the Jeff Ruby at Turfway, act like we won. And now we're going back to Churchill, back to Kentucky Derby. I don't know, what our chances are, what our odds will be, but, like Michael Jordan said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
I've heard that attributed to, respectively, I think, Jordan and Gretzky, but it's a darn good quote, no matter how you slice it.
Whoever said it.
Let's go back to the beginning with how you got involved with Flying Mohawk.
Yeah. So, I jumped in with 2 feet. I maybe got in over my head at one point. We were like, oh my God, these horses are like, the bills, we're learning at a crazy rate, right? It's like you go from not knowing anything to learning things the hard way sometimes. But at one point it was like, all right, no more horses until these horses figure it out and they make it to the track or they run or whatever. And I bought a piece of a couple horses. There was a horse from we went to the Island Sale at Goff's and we picked up a piece. He's actually running at Gulfstream on Thursday Insubordination, and we got in on this Caraconti Flying Mohawk, and I own half of both of those horses, and that's really the only 3-year-olds that I bought where I bought them from the sales. I picked up a couple pieces of legs here and legs there with some people, but as far as I was concerned, those were the only 2 horses that I bought. I offered legs to a couple of buddies, Jeff Barry, Sean Coletta, who both of them have never been in horse racing, and here we are. We're going flying Mohawk. We're going to Churchill with 3 guys that have no idea what they're doing.
When was the first time you thought, hey, maybe the Derby is a possibility for this horse?
Well, Whit called me, I don't know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks ahead of time. We had a good horse with Flying Mohawk. He ran an Aqueduct in a grade 2 as it was a challenge race for the Breeders' Cup.
Pilgrim Stakes.
The Pilgrim, and he ran 5th, but he was like this far from running 3rd. He didn't have the best trip, and if he ran 3rd, I think we had enough to go to the Breeders' Cup. We wouldn't have taken him. His next race at Churchill, he won by 6 or 7, and that would have been his Breeders' Cup race. So that was when it was like, man, this dude's for real. But about 8 weeks before the Jeff Ruby, Whit called me. He's like, hey, I got a great idea. And I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I think let's go take a shot at the Ruby. It's Polly. Caracani's run good on Polly. This horse is training like a monster. We kind of got off him over the winter, so we'd have a good 3-year-old season with him. But he's like, yeah, man, let's go check it out and see what happens. We can always go run in the Transylvania. We can always go run in the American Turf Classic if we don't draw into the Ruby. But it was kind of like let's take a shot, right? Let's see. So I was like, all right, I'm down. Let's go. Why not run a $70,000 turf horse in a Derby prep? I'm all about it. So I didn't know. I mean, I thought he was live in the Ruby. I thought we had a shot. He ran a great race. He had some trouble. We didn't have the best trip, but we had the right trip, I think. And if the horse the one, the Gambit horse, if we see him earlier, maybe we got a better shot at him. But we felt like we run 1 or 2 in the Jeff Ruby. We're going to the Derby. Let's go.
And that explains, I presume, the celebration. You didn't actually think you'd won. You just knew that second was winning.
I felt like it, right? I mean, going to the Kentucky Derby is winning. So we went. We made a second place winner's circle down by the winner's circle. Jeff Ruby came over. He had the roses, draped over his shoulder. We got a good picture with them. And I mean, look, sometimes Ricky Bobby said if you ain't first, you're last. But in this instance, second place is pretty good.
I do have one more. I have to ask you one baseball question, right? So this horse, what I've seen from him in his races, that desire to win, that fighting ability. He did have a tough trip early last time. He kept on fighting. Obviously you're going against some $1 million babies, some first round draft pick types, but isn't there something to be said for the human or the horse that has that innate ability to want to compete and will really throw down for you, even if they're theoretically maybe not the most talented in the contest compared to some of the others?
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I make a lot of baseball references and draw a lot of parallels to what I did for a long time to this sport. But, it's like in baseball, it doesn't matter where you're drafted. It doesn't matter, how much money they paid you to become a pro. once you're on the track, once you're on the field, it's all things are equal. So it's like, it doesn't matter how you get there. It doesn't matter how you started, but like once you get in the race, once you get on the field, once you get in the game, like, everyone's competing for the same amount. So it doesn't matter if you're first rounder, 50th round, it doesn't matter if you're $70,000 turf horse, doesn't matter if you're, $1 million Bob Baffert horse. Like once those gates open, all bets are off and anything can happen.
The pedigree does not matter once the race or the at bat begins. Before I let you get out of here, I do also need you to plug your podcast, which I've been enjoying, Off the Rail, an Icon Racing production. You
Yeah.
and another ball player I have a lot of fond memories of watching, Sean Kelly, putting this one together, combining all manner of things. What got you into doing the show, and what's it all about, and where can people find it?
Yeah, so Off the Rail podcast, YouTube, Spotify. We I think we even started a TikTok account, which I never thought I would say, but our socials are Icon Racing, LFG, and then Off the Rail. I think on TikTok. But look, you know what it is? We started this syndicate, Icon Racing, to bring new owners into the game. My journey into the sport was, you get in and then you have no idea what the hell's going on. It's a tough sport to enter, but once you get in, you start learning and you start peeling back the layers. It is an unbelievable sport with unbelievable people. The horses are like truly magical, and I wanted to share it with people, right? So we started going around and kind of crowdfunding, getting some good, some people that want to get into horse racing, they don't know how. So, my syndicate Icon Racing is a partnership. We have our first vintage. We called it Affirmed after obviously Affirmed, but we're into our second vintage of our raise. We're calling this one Big Brown after Dornick's, Dam Sire, and also unbelievable horse. But I think this is something we could do year in, year out. We raised $3 million. We got about 25 new owners into the game, and we're just the podcast is something, as these horses go, is a way for the new owners to kind of learn about the sport. Obviously, we get off the rails at times with me and Sean, and it's just a fun way to experience horse racing, and hopefully we're going to bring new owners in. We'll keep raising money, and we'll keep letting people know what a great sport horse racing is, and that it actually is easy to become a horse owner and a horse racing owner, because it's a lot of fun.
Great stuff. Godspeed to you, my friend, and Godspeed, Flying Mohawk.
Flying Mohawk, let's go, baby. I'll see you there.
Next up on the Monster Pod, one of our most popular guests. Anytime he appears on these airwaves, you know him from the work he's done all over the sporting world, but most recently on NBC Sports covering horse racing. Randy Moss, welcome back to the show.
A legend in his own mind.
Very happy to have you here, and very happy about the horse we've chosen to talk about, because I think you as a figure maker and the lens through which you view the world will really help us get a handle on Luxor Cafe. I think he's got a chance to be a pretty hot item in this race, given the success Forever Young had last year. What do you think? We'll start with the key question. Is Luxor Cafe a contender?
I would say yes, he's a contender, kind of based on which journalism shows up, the same journalism as we saw in the San Felipe and the Santa Anita Derby. But, more so with Luxor Cafe than some of the recent Japanese horses. There's a little bit of guesswork here. I felt a lot more confident data-wise with some of these other horses that we've seen recently. I mean, you can even go back. Let's go back to Mendelssohn in 2018. Not a Japanese horse, but he came out of the UAE Derby. And he won by a 16th of a mile or something like that. That year, it's easy, much easier to compare these 3-year-olds and get an accurate number on them when they're running on the the Dubai World Cup card or the Saudi card, where we have American horses running that we know we have a good line on, and we can accurately get what I think is a pretty representative number. In the case of going back to Mendelssohn, that year Thunder Snow won the Dubai World Cup. He won it by 5 3/4 lengths over West Coast and Mubtahij, a couple of horses that have been running in the United States. And so it was pretty easy to give Thunder Snow and that effort like a 113, 114, 115. Mendelssohn ran 5 points slower. So that was, a really good speed figure, 108 or so, 107, 108, 109 for Mendelssohn. Now, he made an easy early lead, uncontested early lead that he wasn't going to get in the Kentucky Derby. How would that play out? Didn't play out well. All right, then we move on to Derma-Sotogake. He ran in both the Saudi Derby and the UAE Derby. In the UAE Derby, he wins by 5 lengths, okay? And he actually runs a speed figure 5 points higher than the Dubai World Cup. Now, it wasn't one of the best runnings of the Dubai World Cup. I think Ushpa Tesoro won it. He's around a 100 to 102 type horse. But still, it's like a 105, 106 for Derma-Sotogake, which is why I picked Derma-Sotogake in that year's Kentucky Derby and liked him a lot. Now, as it turns out, he didn't have a very good trip. And possibly, according to the trainer, running in both the Saudi Derby and the UAE Derby and then the Kentucky Derby might have been just a little too much for him. Now, last year, Forever Young runs in the Saudi Derby, and it was a very similar race to the race he ran against Romantic Warrior. It looked like Bookham Dano had the race put away, and Forever Young kept coming, and he gets there to win in a photo finish. Based on the other races on Saudi Cup Day, and the Americans involved, I made that race a 100 Beyer speed figure. And some people were telling me, how can you say at that point in his career, how can you say Bookham Dano was a 100 Beyer speed figure horse? And I say, it's not my job to give opinions. I can just give you the data. And I'm telling you, they both ran a 100 Beyer speed figure. Now, what we saw after that, Bookham Dano comes back and runs a 100.
Yep.
I think in his very next start in the United States, and he's been close to that in almost every one of his races since then. Forever Young comes back in the UAE Derby and runs about 7 points slower than Ushpa Tesoro and Senor Buscador, which I think made him about a 94, 95, tailed off just a little bit. But we saw what Forever Young did in the Kentucky Derby. Arguably was the best horse, either he or Sierra Leone. Now, what about Luxor Cafe? Unfortunately, we don't have a similar line on Luxor Cafe because he just ran in Japan and didn't run against American horses where we could get a good line on him. Okay. It's probably an advantage for Luxor Cafe not having come over to Dubai, to Saudi Arabia, and then Dubai, and then the United States. He's just coming from Japan to the U.S. Okay. What we do have, though, is a line on a couple of the horses that he ran against. Admire Daytona and Don in the Mood did come back and run in the UAE Derby, okay, which might give us a little bit of a line on how good Luxor Cafe is. So how did they run in the UAE Derby? This was not one of the stronger Dubai World Cups this year. You didn't have Fierceness. You didn't have Sierra Leone. You didn't have Locked. You didn't have White Barrio. You had Hit Show and Mixto. I don't want to disparage those horses. You and I would love to own either one of those horses, but they're not true grade 1 horses in the United States.
You're not seeing 113s.
If you give them a 101, 102, which is higher than they've been running, okay, the UAE Derby was run 20 full points slower. So let's say in 82 compared to 102 for the Dubai World Cup. Let's just throw that out there, all right? So Admire Daytona gets an 82 in the UAE Derby. He was beaten in his race before that by Luxor Cafe by 3 and 3 1/4 lengths, something like that.
Sounds right.
Don in the Mood was third. So anyway, he was beaten 3 1/4 lengths fourth behind Luxor Cafe. Don in the Mood was third. That would give Luxor Cafe, based on that line that we get from the UAE Derby, roughly an 89, 88, 89 or so. Now, that was Luxor Cafe's race before last. He comes back in his next start. What we saw, you can see it on YouTube, the Fu Curyu Stakes. You can't get much more visually impressive.
Looked like a turf horse, the way he quickened up. Yeah.
12 flat, according to the sectionals, for the final eighth of a mile. Okay.
Very
How
good.
much how much did he improve from that 88, 89 and the highest of the stakes to the Fukuryu stakes? The competition wasn't as tough because some of his tougher rivals peeled off and went to the UAE and didn't stay in Japan. If you make it, if you're generous and you make it, okay, let's make it a 92, 93, 94, then that puts Luxor Cafe roughly in the same position as Burnham Square, Tapan Street, horses like that. But not bad.
Yeah.
So I think that now again, we're kind of guessing here. But I think that puts that last race, that figure obviously would put Luxor Cafe at least in the conversation among the horses behind Journalism. Not a 106 like we could project with Derma Sotogake, not a 100 like we could project with Forever Young, a little bit further down the line. So as I've kind of gotten a reputation, Pete, as the Japanese guy. I feel like I should take a class and try to learn the language, Konnichiwa, that's hello. I know that much. Sayonara, I know that much. This, I'm not, because I don't think Luxor Cafe, based on guesswork primarily, is as good as Forever Young or Derma Sotogake. I'm not going to pick him in the Derby, but, trust me, for that reason, he'll probably win.
My fear is, I love your case and I agree with the way you have positioned it, that he's not as fast as those others. But with all the attention, especially around Forever Young, and Derma Sotogake, I'll give a nice asterisk to because of the trip, especially the break. I feels like not a race you can consider a representative effort from a speed figure point of view. But I feel like they've been building, that Derma comes back, runs second in the Classic, Forever Young does what he's done around the world. I think the world is ready. The market is ready to gravitate towards this horse. And yet he's not as good. And that feels like a time where, maybe he's an include in bets, but he shouldn't be a key. Does that jibe with what you're saying?
It does. And and I've been saying it for the last 2 years and really even further back than that. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Before the Japanese win the Kentucky Derby, they're starting to target it now. We've seen what the Japanese have done internationally. All these, grandsons and great grandsons of Sunday Silence. I mean, my God, they've been dominating on turf and dirt in Saudi Arabia and in Dubai. And at the Breeders' Cup, they've done pretty well. They didn't do so well last year at Del Mar, but yeah. So I think it's a matter of time before the Japanese take down the Kentucky Derby. They arguably maybe should have done it last year, but is this horse going to be the one? Luxor Cafe visually, you had to like the way he looked when he drew off going clockwise instead of counterclockwise. You had to like his 12-second final furlong. You've got to like the fact that he wasn't flown all the way to the Middle East and run in both those races back to back prior to the Kentucky Derby. We saw what it did to Forever Young.
Right.
And, the big turf horse that he beat for that, Romantic Warrior, both. So, yeah, that's the case for Luxor Cafe.
One last question on this. I think we agree at the right price, very usable Luxor Cafe. Worried a little bit he might be underbet. But is this a year as a figure-oriented player? I mean, is it journalism and then everybody else?
Yeah. I think journalism is going to be I made a line today, Pete, and I made journalism 5-2.
Okay, I like that.
Which in the context of present-day Kentucky Derbies is a pretty solid favorite.
Yeah, that's shorter than American Pharoah. I mean, he was 2.9. So yeah,
and then I think my next highest horse was 7-1, and then 8-1. So,
well, I have to add, it would be a host fail if I didn't ask, where was Luxor Cafe on that list?
Made him 20-1.
Yeah, we see it very similarly. It's fascinating and amazing to have you on here, bringing the data behind this stuff. We're going to have so much more coverage. We'll have you and the Super Jock back in the mix here, if you'll allow, promoting the fantastic coverage coming up on NBC Sports of the Kentucky Derby. And folks should subscribe to the In the Money YouTube channel because we're going to have loads more of these monster pods and lots of other fun stuff to come. Randy, thank you so much.
Sayonara, Pete.
PTF, and Marshall Gramm for another installment of the Kentucky Derby Monster Pod 2025 in the Money Media. Make sure you subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel to get all these Monster Pods. Also, let us know your thoughts on these contenders. Marshall, I asked you who you wanted to talk about. You told us Cole Battle. Let's hear about this horse. I know he's one of the great stories on the Kentucky Derby Trail this year. Maybe we start there.
Well, I mean, look, I had to take him. He's the Oaklawn horse. He won twice. He won the Smarty Jones and the Rebel Stakes at Oaklawn. So he's kind of the hometown horse, and it's a great story. A 72-year-old Lonnie Briley, who's been a long-time trainer, mostly Louisiana-based, buys himself. They buy a nice horse for his owner, $70,000. They spent it at the Texas sales, and look, they're on the Derby Trail. They've got a very nice horse. Horses won $1 million, right? The Rebel had a big purse. The Smarty Jones had a $250,000 purse. And so he's 5-7 lifetime. And, 5-8 lifetime. His 2 losses were on the turf and finished 3rd last time in the Arkansas Derby. So there's a lot to root for. I don't know if there's necessarily a lot to like about him.
We'll get there in a minute. Let's talk about this idea of a good horse and how they can come from anywhere, and pause on that for a minute. I mean, some of the horses we're going to be talking about in these videos, price tags in the 7 figures. Pretty cool to have one who can get to the 7 figures in earnings off the $70,000. I mean, these are the kind of stories that make racing really special, especially when you could throw in, a guy in Briley who seems like could be a character in a book.
Yeah, that's for sure. And what's interesting about that is $70,000 is actually a lot of money for a coal front. Coal front stands for $2,000 in Louisiana, and this is not a Louisiana bred.
Right.
It sounds like reading the story that they couldn't get a van back to Louisiana, so they dropped in Kentucky, and he was selling at the Texas sale where he must have really stood out. And they had planned to spend $15,000, but they really liked the horse, and it got bid all the way up to $70,000. And so, oftentimes you have buyer's remorse when that's the case. But here, I mean, they really got something out of it. So you're right. It was a great sale, forever sold and bred the horse, but also a great purchase of horse again. Like I said earlier, he's made $1 million and has won 4 stakes races.
Yeah, no joke at all. And let's talk about that Arkansas Derby, because my gut about that race is it's not as bad, not that 3rd in the Arkansas Derby is bad, but it's better, I should say, than it looks on paper when you consider the pace dynamics that day and who won and where he came from. Fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know what to do with these races. He's been in 2 consecutive races that have completely collapsed. And if you sort of go back through all his form, really since the Remington race, there have been races that have really been determined by the pace of the race, sort of a textbook example of the pace of the race. If you go back to Remington, the Springboard Mile, which is sort of him showing up to prime time, he'd won the John Lafitte before at Delta Downs, but he won the Springboard Mile, and that race day had a very fast pace. I know you look at it, 23:93 and 47:46 as far as the pace fractions that were set by Speed King, among others. But if you compare that to the rest of the times that day, those are very quick. On the algorithm that I use for pace figures, that the pace figure is about 3 percentile, meaning 97% of all races are slower. So I had that as very much a meltdown, and he got a perfect trip, a little bit of an inside out trip to catch Speed King right at the end. And Speed King's turned out to be a very nice horse as well. And then into the Smarty Jones, where the pace was really slow. He was with the track that day. The track was playing to the outside, and he was outside on a slow pace. He was pressured, but it was a slow pace, and then he finished really well, again, given how slow pace it was. And then into the Rebel Stakes, that race had a meltdown in front of him. Both the Rebel and Arkansas Derby melted down in front of him. And in the Rebel, he was able to get up and win. In the Arkansas Derby, he finished 3rd. And again, all of these are strong efforts. Even the Arkansas Derby was a stronger effort. He made the first move to pass Cornucopia and then got swept up by Sandman and Publisher. But so, in some ways, his record looks quite good.
I thought he was too close to that pace demonstrably last time in the Arkansas Derby, as opposed to the more setup type runs from those previous efforts. Does your data not look the same?
Well, I think he was pretty far back. He was the leader of the horses in the second pack, but they were way behind Sandman and Publisher.
Gotcha.
So, you know, back behind him, he was only a length ahead of First Division and Best Friend Rocket, who are 4th and 5th. Now, again, he was leading that second pack, and they were still going pretty fast, but they were quite a bit behind, you know, just pulling up the incremental pace. He was going fast, but not ridiculously fast.
Okay.
Maybe that's, you could use that as an excuse as to why Sandman and Publisher, who were last and second to last, were able to blow by him. And he made the first big move to put away Cornucopia, but he didn't finish that well, right? He didn't run off from Cornucopia, and he has a little bit of a tendency to get in front and hang, not totally want to go by that last horse. And I really worry that he's a miler. I'm wondering if that last 16th of a mile did him in. He's by Cole, you know, again, he's indifferently bred. He's by a $2,000 stallion, which makes sense given all parts of his story. But Cole Front is, his average winning distance is 6.5 furlongs. His dam won 9 times and was stakes place, but she was a 4.5 furlong sprinter in West Virginia. The second dam was also a sprinter. Both of those horses both the dam and second dam were black type horses as 2-year-olds. And so they were early developers and sprinters. And I just worry that this horse is really a miler that will get exposed on Derby Day. I will say that going into the Arkansas Derby, I was very high on the horse. And even a little bit afterwards, I kept thinking, here's a horse that probably has a lot of a finish and maybe hits the board in the Derby at 30 or 40 to 1, but now I'm much less sure. Even looking, if you look at these new GMAX Equibase charts, they give stride length, and the size of the horse is not everything, right? If Fleet Alex is only like 15.2, but Coal Battle is pretty small. I mean, his stride length is less than 24 feet. Compare that to Sandman, who's over 27 feet. So this is a smaller, short striding horse who turns over his stride very quickly, and he makes these big moves around the turn. I just wonder if he'll make a big move around the Derby turn, then flatten out. So, you know, he's one that I'd love to make a case to hit the board, and I love the way he was finishing in the Rebel. He is a horse that clearly is very sound, and they probably train him very hard, so have a lot of bottom under him. Again, he's raced 8 times, but I just worry that he's a sprinter miler, and he's one that, you know, could ultimately be a very nice miler when he gets cut back. So I've gone from maybe to hit the board to probably, you know, a horse that is in the back half of the field.
Outside looking in. Great analysis as ever. We'll have to talk to you more about that stride length stuff. That's fascinating data. Marshall, always great to have you on these airwaves, and we're going to have you back very soon.
Great. Appreciate it. Thanks, Pete.
PTF back with you for another installment of the 2025 Monster Pod, here to talk about Tiztastic with a man who's seen this beast in the flesh, I believe, back on Rebel Stakes Day. He comes to us from his home. He is one of the founding partners of 10 Strike Racing and a very sharp horse player. Clay Sanders, how are things?
I'm doing great, Pete. I'm excited. It's about to be Derby time, the best time of the year for us horse players. So what's not to like?
So there's a few storylines we can go with Tiztastic, but let's start with my lead-in that I really should have asked you if was correct or not. Have you seen this horse in the flesh? Have you been a fan along the way?
I actually was supposed to be at the Rebel this year, but they moved it from Saturday to Sunday, so I had to cancel my trip. So I have not seen him in person. You know, this horse, I kind of have mixed feelings on this horse. I thought he was bad in the Rebel. The Rebel, you know, he just didn't have a ton of excuses. The inside was probably the place you wanted to be, starting the 13 hole. But he got over on the backside and even during the stretch, but he didn't do a lot of running. But if you put your hand over that race, you know, he's running 2 races this year. He's gotten better each one. You know, he can stay. I mean, you have Tis the Law out of Constitution, out of a Tappet mare. I mean, half the battle in the Derby is finding a horse that wants to stay 1.25 miles. He's already got a win at 1 3/16. So you at least should check that box. So, I mean, as we were talking earlier, there's 20 to 1 shots that have won the Derby this decade that look a lot worse than Tiztastic.
That's for sure. It was really a breakout performance for him in the Louisiana Derby. What did you make of it? Do you think it was in part a product of the setup, or do you think he might be getting good at the right time?
Maybe a little bit of both. Not only the setup, Pete, but I don't think there's a whole lot in that race. And if you look at that form, I mean, I don't think any of those horses are going to be winning major races. Built, I mean, I think he's a sprinter. I think they'll cut him back and he'll be pretty good, but I don't think he wanted anything to do with a mile and 3/16. He definitely ran better. I mean, he ran his lifetime best fig. He's a horse that's going to need a pace setup in the Derby, but, there's quite a few that are probably in that same situation. I think what's unclear right now is what's the pace setup going to be in this race? I mean, you got the two Baffords. I mean, they're not going to be gunning against each other. What other horses are we going to get? What's coming from overseas? That'll be the key part of whether you want to bet this horse is what do you make of the pace? Where do they line up in the gate? And what do you make of the race?
We've got a lot more content coming down the pike that's going to be dealing with questions exactly like that. I think of a runner like American Promise that's going to be speed. We have a Derby Monster Pod up about him. But yeah, we will get to all the finer points, the pace, and of course, it all culminates with our final answer show we'll be doing live from Lexington. I think the trainer angle is something we have to talk about with Tiztastic, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, Steve Asmussen is a legend. I mean, he's going to get a Derby. It's just when. And, as we were talking earlier, when are the racing gods going to smile upon him? Could this be the year? I mean, it certainly could. I mean, outside of journalism, we don't have a lot of standouts in this race. And who's to say he doesn't, get blocked as we saw in the Santa Anita Derby? It takes him a little while to get going. 20 horse field. Who knows?
I know you're a big horizontal exotics player, and I'm going to give you the out here of you. This answer can be revised, obviously, based on the composition of the field, based on the pace, the draw, etc. But from here, where would you have Tiztastic in your horizontals? Would he be a prime A level? Would he be more of a backup B contender? Would he be a deeper backup C level contender, or would he be an X, a horse who's not on your tickets?
He's going to be a C level type horse. The one thing we'll want to wait is see how he's working out. He hasn't worked out of that Louisiana Derby. I'm curious to see what the clockers are saying. Has he given any indication that he's going to make that next move forward? Because as you alluded to, this was a lifetime top. He went from, I believe, like an 85 when he won the race early in the year, and then he gets the 95. He's obviously going to need to make another jump. Is there something that's given us some signal? These Steve Asmussen horses do continue to improve over a season. I think he is the best trainer at getting his horses to just continually improve. Now he's going to have to improve, and he's going to have things go his way. He's not as good a closer as journalism or Sandman, so he's going to have to trip out. Where's he going to be posted, and does he get that set up? But like you said, I think a C level, and for the vertical players, I really think he is a horse you would like to have underneath. These are the kind of horses that can stay at a big price and get up under.
The Asmussen record in the Derby, just to go back to him for a minute, is not pretty. But I think you, like me, there's no signal that the Derby is a very hard race. I don't think it's representative to pull a trainer and say, oh, for whatever, and say, so that means I'm going to be against a horse like Tiztastic. He certainly doesn't have to win, but I don't see how you can see Steve Asmussen winning his trainer as anything but a positive. Agree or disagree?
Oh, I 100% agree. I mean, this guy knows how to win big races. And maybe there's some signal this year that, he won 2 Derby preps down at the fairgrounds with different horses, that maybe his horses, I would think maybe the big knock is that they mature a little later, that they're better in late summer instead of ready in May. But maybe, he's tweaked some things to get his horses ready earlier. But I definitely don't view Steve Asmussen as a negative for the Derby. Absolutely.
Whatever
not.
the stats say, you can tell the stats to shut up when it comes to Steve Asmussen in the Kentucky Derby.
Flightline got a certain trainer a win in the Breeders' Cup that had never won. I mean, obviously the horse can get you there, which as we've seen in the Derby, but Steve Asmussen is definitely not a negative.
No, for sure. Wanted to make sure we made that abundantly clear. You mentioned about workouts. That'll be another one of the videos we have during this fire hose of content on the In the Money Media YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the content. Click the notification bell. And while you're at it, hit a like if you like this video. Loads more stuff to come. Thank you very much, Clay.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. Good luck to everyone.
Mike, it's always a pleasure to have racing's royalty. I know you don't. You're gonna blush a little bit, but you're a legend, and we're glad to have you.
Hey, it's great to be here, and good to get to talk to you, JK. It's been too long.
It has been a while. I feel like I used to see you. It felt like every other week at Keeneland somehow in the bluegrass room up there, but life has changed a little bit, and so we'll have to settle for this little Zoom call. Mike, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about sovereignty. You've been around a lot of Kentucky Derby winners in your time as a professional horse player and watching lots of Derby horses. And the one thing I'll say about sovereignty is I was so impressed by his comeback race in the Fountain of Youth. Excuse me, in the not in the Fountain of Youth, in the Fountain of Youth, excuse me, that I was excited about the next step he was going to take in the Florida Derby. And I just thought it was kind of
I'm going to give him an excuse for that last race. I thought the track was a little speed favoring at routes that day. So I believe don't hold me to this, but I think maybe the exacta in the other route races was horses that laid 1, 2, 3 in both those races. So he got in a little trouble on the first turn. I thought he ran on well, finished well, didn't give any ground to Tappan Street down the lane. I didn't downgrade him after the Florida Derby. Still think he's a nice, solid horse with a good finish.
With your experience in dealing with Bill Mott, the profile of this horse, right? Having a nice 2-year-old year, coming back, running extremely well, and then basically to your point, maybe even running just the same race he ran off of that long layoff. What would be your kind of feel for what you'd expect from a Bill Mott trained horse like this in his third start off a layoff?
I think Sovereignty will move forward. Mott is great at, like you guys always say, Mott with a target, and it just looked to me like he's bringing this horse along and trying to let him develop, and the screws didn't look completely tight to me last time. So, I think you're going to get another move forward. In those races, I noticed that Burnham Square came out of the Fountain of Youth and improved that figure by 5 points when he came back and won an average or below average bluegrass. I know that, but the races are holding up all right. The Florida prep races and everything that I'm seeing, I'm expecting Sovereignty to run his race in the Derby and improve.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you telling us about Sovereignty. I'd be doing the listeners a disservice if I had you on here and didn't ask you who you actually fully liked in the Kentucky Derby. Do you have any thoughts, strong opinions or just opinions?
I have a strong opinion. I really like journalism, and I hate to be a chalk eating weasel in the Derby, but there's a lot of that's the race every year that even if the horse is a favorite, you can do a lot of damage with a favorite if you're locked in. And to me, he looks like the best horse. I love the way he's coming into the race. I think he's met decent horses, and Michael McCarthy, the time just kind of feels right. I can totally picture him getting the job done with this horse.
Mike, it's always an absolute pleasure. We'll see you soon.
All right. You too.
Well, to the other person in this world who I think actually might fly more than me, it's probably close, but you're definitely in the running. Acacia, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I know I've been on a plane like every 3 days for the last few weeks. I'm in week 4 now of 5 weeks as a nomad. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so we're getting there.
Well, let's get to Owen Almighty. And these are my words, not yours. But and no one's giving anyone a hard time, but I do think this probably goes down in the Hall of Fame for one of the strongest owner pick the spots. It just felt like every time Brian Lynch had a microphone in front of his face, it felt like maybe cutting this horse back, going a little bit shorter. The 1.25 miles was a question, but it just seems like Derby fever is a real fever, and the connections of Owen Almighty have it. You've seen this horse a couple of times. What are your thoughts about the distance of 1.25 miles for Owen Almighty?
Yeah, I saw Owen Almighty all 3 times he raced at Tampa Bay Downs, and I think he's a super cool horse. But to your point, I mean, even before the Tampa Bay Derby, and then even after he won the Tampa Bay Derby, Brian Lynch told me in the interview right after, I'm still leaning towards Pat Day Mile, which I was thinking, that's awesome. That's going to be perfect for this horse because he's kind of built that way a bit more. He's by Spite Sound. There's plenty of speed. I know there's some stamina on the bottom side with the Bayern influence, but in the way that he's put together, he's just so quick looking, and he's obviously been able to use his speed to his advantage. I even wrote in my notes down when I saw him in Pasco going 7 furlongs, fine today, but I wouldn't want him much further than that. And he ran huge in the Sam F. Davis. He ran huge in the Tampa Bay Derby, but Tampa Bay Derby, he was able to get along with some pretty soft fractions on the front end for the caliber of horse they was racing against. And then in the Pasco, they went 1-2, or excuse me, in the Sam Davis, they went 1-2 around, and that was a day when inside speed was a huge benefit, as we saw for John Hancock, who won that race. So I think it's a little bit tricky. He tried hard in the bluegrass, but East Avenue of the pace setters was able to hold around while Owen Almighty was not. I'm sure closers in the Kentucky Derby field are thrilled that he's going in there. It's not my horse, not my decision, but personally, I would have been far more in favor of him if he were in the Pat Day Mile.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where, you mentioned it, that Tampa Bay Derby, I think, might have tricked some folks into thinking he wants to go that far because he did it that day. But like you mentioned, that racetrack was a little bit biased, and he was probably on the right part of that racetrack to kind of carry him along. For the new listeners and viewers we get for this time of the year for Derby, it's kind of like that walking conveyor belt in the airport that I know Acacia is very familiar with. Just kind of carries you along a little bit. I think that's what happened to him in the Tampa Bay Derby. If you were trying to be optimistic, where do you think the ceiling is for him on the first Saturday in May? Do you think he's the type of horse that could be involved late and hit the board, or do you just feel like they're going to get the experience of the walkover and all of the excitement of the Derby, and then maybe some more fun things along the line in the summer when he goes a little bit shorter?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, historically, throughout the Kentucky Derby, you've seen a lot of horses in the first flight do really well. I think the last couple of years we've seen more deep closers, and this year, just looking at the way the race is potentially shaping up, it looks like there could be a pretty hot pace in the Derby, and you will see some of the closers appreciate that and come rolling late. However, I do wonder, you never know what the weather is going to be like in Louisville that time of year. You never know how the race dynamics are going to shake out. You never know if one of the other speed horses gets completely wiped out at the gate with 19 other horses breaking out. I mean, there's all of those things that can happen. And he has speed. That's the name of his game. And that's, I think, one of his biggest weapons. He's a really cool horse. And I thought that he really progressed a lot throughout the winter in all the races he ran down at Tampa. I think, thus far, Brian's done a great job managing him and putting him in the right spots to potentially pick up some points or pick up some big wins or placings. I think it's going to be a tall order for him going into the Derby. But like I said, with that size of field, he's one that if he breaks well and gets that forward position, he's not going to have to deal with the traffic that some of the others are.
Acacia Clement, I appreciate you taking the time. Enjoy the rest of your day at Oaklawn. Have fun at the show. I'm not working today. I work tomorrow. So I'll see you tomorrow or hear you tomorrow.
Very good. I look forward to it. I miss you. I haven't actually seen you in person in a long time.
It's been a while. Soon enough, we'll see each other every day. Almost.
Very good.
Brendan, when it comes to East Avenue, in his last 4 races, there's been one version that shows up and another version, right? His Breeders' Futurity, obviously, he made the lead. He was sensational. His Juvenile in the race down at Fairgrounds are a little bit disappointing. And then his recent race, he shows back up. And although I'm sure you were frustrated you didn't get the win, he did show back up in a way that I think gives you some confidence. Let's go back to that Breeders' Futurity. I'm a little reluctant to assume that just because he made the lead, that's why he ran so well that day. What do you think is the reason he ran so well in the Breeders' Futurity?
I don't think so, John. And listen, the way the race was laid out in the Futurity, the favor was drawn inside. He was a fast horse. We decided we needed to get out of there and get rolling. He ran 3/4 first time that was they didn't see another horse. So, it was just kind of what we went to do. We didn't necessarily go to put him on the lead in the futurity, um, but we were going to be prominent. We weren't going to let that horse get away from us. And, he went out on the lead. Nobody could go with him. He's got a super high cruising speed. And, they just couldn't catch him from there. So, yeah, it was impressive. But did we distinctly go to put him on the lead? Absolutely not. It just kind of happened.
And then you and I have talked personally about the juvenile and what you think happened in that situation, but I wanted you to share that with all the listeners.
Yeah, he, it was the last thing you expect to happen. He stumbled badly, Tyler nearly came off them. And, basically watching the race, our chance was gone. We didn't really get into the race after, which, in a way might have been a good thing, because I think sometimes if they have a really, really hard race, something like that happens, they finish 5th or 6th. I think it can be very, very tough on a 2-year-old. So we kind of drew a line through it, didn't pay that much attention to it, kind of put it down to the bad break and left it there.
Want to let folks know this video brought to you by our friends at TwinSpires.com. The Kentucky Derby Betting Challenge coming up on Derby Day. You can qualify all month long. TwinSpires.com. Navigate over to that tournaments tab. Get involved with horse racing's latest major tournament.
I know you were hopeful that the real East Avenue was going to show up in the Risen Star, and when that didn't happen at the end of the day, what was the conclusion you came to on why he ran so poorly there?
I still don't really know. I mean, he was in a good position, and he just, that horse just got away from him. It was a kind of a, looking back on it, it was a kind of a weird race. Nobody really got into it, save for the winner. I don't know. I think after that race, he coming into the race, he was doing great. John, all on the face of it, he was working very well. Seemed like he was doing really well. He kind of sailed through his works and everything. But looking back on it, the horse probably didn't learn an awful lot last year. Because the two races he won, he never saw another horse. And he never really had to knuckle down at any stage and fight. And it probably came very easy to him. And I think in New Orleans, when it came to knuckling down, I don't know that he didn't knuckle down. I don't know that he knew how to knuckle down. And I think I got pretty aggressive with him in his work after the race in New Orleans, and. Listen, he's worked behind horses, he's worked up beside horses and everything. So we had everything covered, but we got pretty aggressive with him, and obviously we were pretty aggressive with him in the bluegrass that week. But does he to be on the lead? I don't think so. I think he might be. It might have been a sign that he's putting it all together. He's an immensely talented horse. To a point that he's got talent like I've never seen, and I think he's just he maybe didn't have all the pieces put together, and I think now he showed in the bluegrass he might be starting to do it, and if he is and he improves again off of it, then I think he can be very dangerous in any race.
Well, Brendan, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm a fan of the horse. I'm looking forward to him. I think he might be a little ignored. And we all know that speed can be dangerous at Churchill Downs going 1.25 miles. Saffie, have you made it to Louisville yet, or are you still in South Florida?
No, actually, I'm in Lexington right now because we're gonna breeze early on tomorrow, and then I'm gonna head back to Florida and then back to Louisville.
Well, him is Neoequos, who's on the outside looking in, but I think a lot of times you like to think that you're going to be able to pull this one off. We'll see what happens. Talk a little bit about this horse, right? He's been third in both of the major preps down in Florida at Gulfstream, the Florida Derby and the Fountain of Youth. Tell me a little bit about the horse and why you think this is a spot that makes sense for him.
The horse has tried. He's run well in the fountain. We stretched him out to in the Fountain Youth. He ran well. Sovereignty won that race, and then he actually beat Burnham square in that race. And then he came back in the Florida Derby and he ran well again. In both races, if you watch him by about the Fountain Youth, probably by the 3/8 pole, he was traveling really well. And in the Derby, he looked good at the quarter pole. Distance is a question mark, so you can't say it's an ideal race. But hey, number wise in the rags, he keeps getting faster. He hasn't regressed at a distance on the rags, although visually we might think distance is a question mark. So it's a Derby. Give it a chance and see what happens.
Well, it's funny. You said in the Fountain of Youth at the 3/8 pole, he looked good. At the quarter pole in the Florida Derby, he looked good. So as the distances got longer, later in the race, he looked better. Do you feel pretty comfortable with the fact that he's going to be able to handle the distance? Or is it one of those things, like you mentioned, it's a big question mark?
It is a big question mark. My gut says no, but he ran just as well going a mile and 1/8 further. I mean, and the mile and 16th at Gulfstream this year was actually more than a mile and 16th. It's probably was close to a mile and 1/8 because they had to run up for the distance. I mean for the gate. So the one thing about a horse is he relaxes well, and that's an attribute. The more you can relax a horse, the further you can get him to go, and that's the one attribute in the Derby. Maybe he might sit fifth or sixth, and I feel like he when he has a target, he runs into them. So that will kind of be the tactics that you play in the Derby.
In a perfect world, you put your head on your pillow after the Kentucky Oaks on Friday night. You wake up on Saturday. The dream of you winning this race with Neoequos. How does it unfold? It's like you just laid it out there, sitting sixth, and the target makes the lead at the 8th pole. How do you see this thing happening?
Yeah, in a perfect world, you like him to be sitting like off a couple leaders that are leading are going quick, and then they tow him into the race, and maybe he gets first run and hangs on. That's what I've been dreaming about. Realistically, I can't see him winning, but it doesn't stop me from dreaming, and that's what gives you a chance in racing. You got to dream, and I've been dreaming every day about it. And the shower, all about that's all you dream about. So there's a lot of races that you feel you're going and you lose, and hey, look, sometimes there's races you think you have no chance, and things happen. The horse is doing well. He has one more work to go. I'm going to go back in Florida and breeze him on Thursday, and hopefully everything goes well, and the rest is history. A lot of the years, JK, as you know, the best horse doesn't win the Derby. I mean, you've seen it happen a lot. We took White Bar there, and look, we were white all the way around, and he ran no good. So give it a shot and see what happens.
Tom, a busy week for you, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's stacking up that way. I just got home. I went out to California for the last couple of pieces of work. It's we put so much effort into all of this. It's just to try enjoy the journey now, and it's amazing to watch those guys at their craft and spend that bit of quality time with Baffert and Mike Smith and Martin Garcia, and just how intense it all is, but yet how comfortable they are and how professional. Like, it's just really, it's magic to watch.
Well, let's start with the 2-year-old champion in Citizen Bull, who, when he makes the lead, he's undefeated. He made the lead, prior to his last start. In his last start, he made the lead. Didn't go so well. Let's just go back to the drawing board here with Citizen Bull and talking with Bob. And what do you think happened last time with Citizen Bull?
Look, I personally, my view, and I believe Bob would probably share this view, is the horse came out of the Breeders' Cup in great shape. And we really only ran him one time between the Breeders' Cup and the Santa Anita Derby. And that may have been a mistake. We were probably going a little bit, he's a horse that does everything very naturally, very efficiently. We may have kind of underestimated, another race may have been to his benefit. We definitely feel he's come forward again from the Santa Anita Derby. And we feel his schedule has been good coming into the Kentucky Derby. His work this weekend was very good. Kind of sat off a horse, passed a horse, did everything kind of, just very straightforward. Garcia seems to fit the horse. I'm not sure, sometimes you kind of worry about jockeys and mentalities, but there's something about these two beings that seem to go very, very well together. And he quickened very well. He reacts to Martin. And Martin has been great. He's gone to California and worked this horse several times. He's put a massive effort into making sure that this was his mount. And believe me, there was some competition for that mount. And I'm glad, just from a level of karma, etc., that Martin is the one that gets to ride him. He turned him into a champion 2-year-old, and
you know, he's definitely on the road to redeeming his position here. Hopefully he can really show up the first Saturday in May.
So you talk a little bit about a situation that you're likely going to have conversations about, which is that at least Citizen Bull's best races have come while he's found the front end. You have another horse in your group with Rodriguez, who ran his best race finding the front end. What's the plan there? What's Bob saying to you? Obviously, the draw is going to make a huge difference. Where they end up drawing, well, I'm sure will impact the strategy, the instructions there. But how do you handle those two styles being so similar?
Yeah, look, it's a very fair and very good question. I think both horses definitely have speed, and you know, Rodriguez has come from he's been behind horses a little bit more than Citizen Bull in some of his races. So I think they have that experience. I think Rodriguez has learned. He is still a very young horse. He's a May 20th baby, so his birthday makes him young. But he's over the last 4 or 5 weeks, you know, coming into and coming out of the wood, it really feels like he's matured very well. So I think he's a horse that, you know, it's great to have someone like Mike on there who's going to be able to make that gate time decision. It's not game time, it's gate time. As soon as that gate opens, you're going to have to work out where you are. And do I think he can sit off a horse? Yeah, I really do. I think he's a horse he has natural speed. He could do either. I really feel strongly about it. And we just want a good clean break. We want a good clean break, and you know, Mike can work his way into that first turn and work out what the best strategy is. You know, there's no point in going 21-2, is there?
Well, obviously the Derby is the big race, at least the next one on the agenda. But there's a couple of horses I do want to touch with while I have you here, whether they're going to be running on the undercard or waiting the 2 weeks for the Preakness. Can you give us an update on Cornucopian and Goal Oriented?
Yeah, Cornucopian worked this weekend. Again, he works like he's only a good horse can work. You know, he really has that efficiency and motion that's quite, it's beautiful to watch. So yeah, look, we have a couple of spots potentially pinpointed for him that could potentially lead him into the Preakness if things went well. But I mean, that's a big ask, and it's a lot of things have to go right. But he's healthy, he's well, he's enormously exciting. Really love that colt. Goal Oriented also worked this weekend, and I think it sounds bashful, but he's a colt that he was ready to go as a 2-year-old. We had a little setback. We really needed to give him his time and let him come back to himself, and he has. And has he come back in a major way? I thought his race, very seldom a race gives you tingles and you kind of go, shit, what do we have here? And he had that. He gave me that. You know, he really, physically, you look at him like he looks every bit of a midsummer horse. You know, whether it's a Belmont, Travers, that sort of campaign. I think they're the sort of targets that he could have in his arsenal going forward. So he's exciting. We'll certainly try to get another mile into him, or get a mile into him somehow in the near future, and work it out from there. But he's very exciting. It's an exciting family. You know, it's a family that Saul loves. He's out of a half sister to Lady Eli, and you know, not this time as, you know, he's just taken himself to a new level now, hasn't he? He's a very, very, very elite stallion. So.
Well, Tom, we wish you the best of luck wherever all these Starlight, Matticat, et al. Horses show up. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Ryan, what's going on, my man?
How's it going, JK? Happy to be back and joining you today.
Well, good. Let's talk a little bit about Publisher. I guess the first thing, the 800-pound gorilla in the corner of the room over there, is the fact this horse has run 7 times and has never won. He's actually going to be a maiden running in the Kentucky Derby. What does that do to you in terms of how you evaluate this horse?
You know, It depends. He's certainly more of kind of an underneath play for me. I think not breaking your maiden obviously is going to be to your detriment, but he's the right kind of run style, and he's certainly a talented horse who I think still has to kind of grow into himself. But clearly, Asmussen and the connection think highly enough of him to throw him into the Derby off of really good performances in the Arkansas Derby and the Rebel before that, finishing second and third, I believe, respectively. So. 7-race maiden, hasn't quite gotten to the winner's circle yet, but he's been really close. He's been knocking on the door, and I think he has the right kind of run style. Jockey switched to Irad Ortiz for the Derby. So, obviously you get one of the top riders in the country to be on him. Again, third, fourth, I think is probably his ceiling. I think there's just some proven talent that know how to, find the wire, find the winner's circle, but Publisher's certainly one I'd use underneath.
It's funny. It's the idea that he hasn't won and he's being trained by someone who has never won the Derby, which is still shocking to me. The winningest trainer in North American history has not won the Kentucky Derby at a racetrack in which he runs a lot of horses. Does that affect the way you think of Publisher? Also, the fact that Steve Asmussen has never won this race?
Man, it really just speaks to the fact of how hard the Derby is to win, right? The winningest trainer in North America, as you mentioned, just hasn't been able to get in the winner's circle for the Derby. He's been close numerous times. I think Publisher's another one that's going to get close for him. Hard trying horse with a lot of ability there. And again, I think it's more bad luck, if anything, on Asmussen's case that he hasn't been able to get to the winner's circle. He was close a few years ago until Rich Strike came up the rail. There's just, it's an impossible race to win. Can't go your way that many times. So eventually I think it's going to swing his direction. I don't know if Publisher's the horse, but I know Publisher's going to give a really good effort. He has a really nice 1-2 punch also with Tiztastic in the race this year.
I heard Steve say that one of the things he was really excited about with Publisher of all the horses he's ever led over there for the Kentucky Derby is that he believes that Publisher will handle the hoopla better than any other horse he's ever brought over there. He seemed very confident when talking about that. When it comes to how they handle the surroundings of the hectic Derby day, and the fact that this horse can handle it, does that help you in terms of kind of getting over the hill a little bit with using him?
Without a doubt, that helps both getting over the hill to use that horse and, possibly fading some other horses that either haven't been in front of a crowd that big, although none of these horses have been in a crowd with 100,000 people chanting their name and cheering on Derby Day. So that's certainly something that you look for as a sense of maturity in a horse. So if a trainer really likes that a horse is mature for his age at 3 years old and can handle that crowd noise, can handle that environment, that's certainly going to upgrade that horse in my eyes versus, horses that haven't faced that crowd. You really don't know how they're going to react. If the horse isn't entirely mature, doesn't know how to handle that crowd, that can certainly throw a horse off on game day. So here, Asmussen being confident about Publisher's maturity and his ability to handle everything thrown at him come Derby Day, that's only kind of a vote of confidence in my eyes.
All right, final answer. On top, underneath, or toss?
He's going to be, I love playing the dollar superfecta at the Derby. So he's, a third and fourth place use for me. I think, those top two positions, I can kind of narrow it down to maybe three choices for me. But Publisher is absolutely one that's going to be coming late. He's going to be picking up the pieces, and he has a really strong finish, and he should love every bit of this 10 furlong distance. So he's a third, fourth horse for me.
PTF back with you in the bunker. 2025 Kentucky Derby Monster Pod. We turn our attention to the Far East, and when we do that, we bring in our expert, helps us out with the JRA picks on the In the Money Media website and a frequent guest on these airwaves. Alex Henry on location. How are you?
Hey, doing great, PTF. Thanks for having me, and I'm excited to talk JRA.
So we're going nominally. This video is about is not about Luxor Cafe. It's about the other Japanese contender. Who's qualified for the race through the UAE Derby? What can you tell us about Admire Daytona?
Yeah, I can tell you quite a bit about Admire Daytona. So this is a 3-year-old colt owned by Northern Farm and Junko Kondo. Drefong colt out of a Shackleford mare, Ice Pastel, but she was bred in Japan or sold to Japan via our awesome auction system. As you know, many Japanese outfits do. They buy American speed, especially, that Shackleford line. They like to cross their stamina. So it makes sense. She'd be bred to Dre Fong in Japan. And so this colt has been, kind of on and off. He's won twice from 6 starts, most recently winning the UAE Derby just last weekend. So really exciting that he was able to, show his skills, even though he was not the favorite. He was the 5th choice. But I am really excited for this colt's future.
Let's talk about the UAE Derby specifically and try to put it in context. I know you've got some data at some point where you did such a great job for us last year with the speed figure conversions for Breeders' Cup. We'll do something like that once again on the In the Money Plus side. Folks who want all the info can check that out, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. But there's a couple of different ways of trying to estimate that figure. In another one of our videos here, Randy Moss, when we were talking Luxor Cafe, estimated that figure in the low 80s, definitely not as fast as the race last year. You have another perspective on that, which I'd love to hear.
I do. So at least for Admire Daytona, Forever Young ran a pretty big fig last year, which made us very excited for his Derby prospects, and he ran to those projected results. But for Admire Daytona, his time form has him at a 109 rating, so that's different than the time form speed figures we see on our forms. But that is considerably lower than Forever Young. He was rated, I believe he got a 117 last year for his UAE Derby win. So we are looking at a horse with a lot of potential upside. Definitely hasn't peaked yet, but I'd be interested to see, when we do our full analysis, it'd be interesting to see other sources like Netkeba, what they'd say about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, that puts it considerably, everybody agrees, considerably slower than Forever Young. But to me, just rough translating that time form number, that feels like high 80s buyer, which certainly gives him more of a squeak than Randy's low 80s buyer. One question I have about this horse, though, as you go through that pedigree, it seems like for a Japanese runner, speed more than stamina. What do you think Admire Daytona's ability is going to be to get the 10 furlongs?
I mean, great question. Drapong, we know that's all speed there. Shackleford, speed. But on his dam side, so Ice Pastel, her damn million gift is by Sunday Silence, which, as we all know, Derby winner, Preakness winner, has that stamina influence and has been a primary stamina influence in Japan for the last pretty much 40 years at this point.
Change the breed.
Indeed, and has Nijinsky on that dam line side as well. So significant stamina influences there. So if the trainer isn't worried, I wouldn't be worried. They're pretty good at pinpointing the distance their horses like in Japan.
And something else we're going to be doing here on the channel is checking in from the grounds the week of. We're going to have workout videos. We'll have the opportunity to have some of our experts see the horse in the flesh and be able to report back on that, which will, give us some insight into how he's handling the local surroundings, etc. So let's get to the bottom line on Admire Daytona. And then, of course, I have to take your temperature on Luxor Cafe as well. But is this a horse you're considering for your wagers as more than just the ultimate JRA fangirl?
I really want to see him closer to Derby Day. I definitely want to check out those works on inthemoneymedia.com and Inner Circle as well. But I want to see what folks on the ground are saying about him, because I'm worried that, as Dubai takes a lot out of horses. We saw even from the Saudi Cup day to Dubai World Cup night. So a lot of those horses that performed well in Saudi didn't perform as well as we thought they would in Dubai. So I want to see him, in video flesh before I make a decision.
How about Luxor Cafe? I mean, he seems demonstrably faster, beat Admire Daytona in that race 2 back by 3 1/4 lengths. I'm curious what the perspective is. We won't have time form figures for them. Again, we will have some figure conversions coming down the line. But what's your gut? I mean, you certainly can't be more impressive visually than he was in the Fukaru Stakes.
Pete, I'm so freaking excited for this colt. I've been waiting for an American Pharaoh to come along that really could contend in the Derby. My favorite U.S. American horse during my lifetime is American Pharaoh, tied Zenyatta, if you have to ask. But I'm just super freaking excited. His race last out was really good. And that Hyacinth Stakes qualified him for the Derby. That listed stake in February was excellent. So pedigree is there, 10 out of 10. Half to Cafe Pharaoh, which was another exciting horse in the past, won 4 from 6. He'd be my top 3. I can't wait.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we'll talk more before the Derby. I will show off my cool. And if I hold at the angle, you can almost see it. You'll appreciate this. My Briar American Pharaoh ornament. And if I pull out the screen here just a little bit more, let's see, you might just be able to see Zenyatta herself. Oh yeah, there she is. She's just out of frame. She's just out of frame. She's back there though. Trust me on this one, Alex. We'll have to have some sort of horse toy and doll off at some point. I'm going to make you the 1-5 favorite, but I'm not going down without a fight.
Yeah, I'm bet. Let's do it.
Alex, thank you so much.
Thank you.
PTF and Mikey P back with you on this Kentucky Derby Monster Pod 2025. Next up, a horse currently on the outside looking in, but he may get in. We've seen this movie before. I speak of Render Judgment. What do you think of this horse's chances, Mikey?
Well, on the win end, I do think that he could be up against it. He's not really a win type. He just has a maiden win to the credit, albeit at Churchill Downs, going a route of ground. He's danced some dances. He tried the Kentucky Jockey Club at 2. He was in a gun runner early, the Risen Star, Virginia Derby, Bluegrass. He's getting checks in those races. So he belongs with these horses, but he's more an underneath type.
I hear where you're going with that. I see 2 positives I'll touch on. One might be the pedigree. You've got Blame, obviously, very stout distance horse, famously running down Zenyatta under these same TwinSpires. Commissioner, a horse that ran a huge race in the 1.5-mile Belmont Stakes. And just looking at his races seems like one, it would not surprise me if distance was his friend. And then the other element that is worth highlighting is the trainer, Kenny McPeak, going for his 2nd win in a row in this race. How much do you factor either of those things into your assessment of Render Judgment's chances?
Well, a lot of these horses are going to be tested going 1.25 miles, and he certainly has the pedigree to do so. And a lot of times you don't know until they get that extra distance how they're going to perform. So certainly I do think that that is a favorable thing for this horse. And you can't argue with the connections there. McPeak has had a phenomenal past year and a half, but he's had a phenomenal career. So the fact that he thinks that this horse belongs in this race, he's earned it. If he does happen to draw in off the list, I do think that has merit. And I don't think that they would waste this horse in the Derby if they didn't think they had some chance of hitting the board.
Curious to know what you think will be the running style in this race. Do you think he'll be held up to maybe get that run into 3rd, 4th, and 5th? Or do you think if they go, they're going to be in the thick of things? I worry if they're too aggressive, I could see him finishing towards the back of the pack. But I do think the scenario you outlined of him being alive for underneath could exist if he gets a very cold run. What do you think is going to happen?
It is tricky because this pace could end up supersonic. It looked a couple weeks ago like there was no pace in this Derby, and now all of a sudden it seems like there is a ton of pace in this Derby, especially with horses like East Avenue, with Citizen Bull, with Rodriguez, who the jockey said that, he is definitely going in the race. This horse likes to be up close. If you look at that Virginia Derby, he sat very close to a quick pace. He tried to be closer in the Bluegrass. He's just not fast enough to keep up with the quick ones early. So he more is probably going to have to grind it out, get a mid-pack kind of trip, and hope that that the distance suits him more than the others.
Great stuff, Mikey. Appreciate you coming in here to talk Render Judgment. We'll be talking soon. One of the most fun things about the Kentucky Derby Monster Pods we do here on the In the Money Media YouTube channel is we're not just talking to analysts and handicappers and horse players. We get to talk to connections from time to time. We have on the trainer of, for my money, the most interesting story in this year's Kentucky Derby. He trains Chunk of Gold. He is Ethan West. Ethan, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Things are great. Derby
Good.
season, very exciting. I'm going to start off with a very basic question about this horse. Now, when you were on with us a few weeks ago with Mikey P, you said you didn't really know the backstory of why Chunk of Gold was available for the purchase price he was for these owners, $2,500 taking on these millionaires in the Kentucky Derby. I'm curious if you've heard any scuttlebutt about it, or if you just view it as not your concern. You just deal with him once he gets to the shed row.
Yeah, no, honestly, not too worried about it. I haven't really dug into it at all, but I'm sure they have their reasons. A lot of people passed him up, obviously, but it's worked out well for all of us.
I was going to say, a lot of people regretting that decision. And you hear stories like this from time to time of just horses that fall through the cracks for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. Good horses can come from anywhere. He's great evidence of that. We've had people on these airwaves talking about the great deals they've gotten for $70,000 for a horse to run in the Kentucky Derby. And they're not wrong. But still, I think there's something special and fun about a horse that comes for this kind of purchase price. And I would imagine we'll be hearing a little bit about that David versus Goliath angle regarding Chunk of Gold. Let's get to the next really big question. How's he doing coming out of that last race?
He's doing well. Shipped back from Louisiana in good order, took back to the track. His energy levels right where we need it. Put a first work back into him this past weekend. That kind of got the motor running again for him. It's starting to get him fired back up. And this week's been, he's been real energetic, and we'll be back to working on Saturday morning.
That's great. It's good to hear that trajectory is going in the right direction. I know when you talked to Mikey P, you weren't sure about the next spot for him. What ultimately made you choose the spot you did, and are you pleased with how it all turned out?
Oh, absolutely. We're pleased with it. It worked out well. He trained and ran a lot better on the dirt than he did the synthetic. We liked the extra distance. We liked the longer stretch down there. The only thing we were worried about was the ship. It's a long ship if we wanted to do it twice. We left it into the horse's hands to make sure he'd come back out of it in good order, and it didn't knock too much out of him. And once we realized that, we were pretty hell-bent on going back down.
Tell me about the decision in terms of when you started thinking about him as a Kentucky Derby trail horse. There was a great story that you mentioned before, that if you didn't have such rotten weather in at Turfway this year, he might not have ended up in that stakes race as early as he did. But when did you first start thinking Derby?
Oh, exactly. The weather, for as bad as it was, it worked out in our favor. It was we took a chance going down to the Risen Star. Obviously, we stepped him up in class a lot from his first start to his second start, and handled that well. And then, stepped him up again, and we're like, kind of threw some darts at the wall here and see if something would hit. And he answered a lot of questions going down there the first time. And then once we got the first round of points, and we all kind of started thinking, well, wow, it's really not too far away if we can get another big performance. And once again, he stepped up to the task.
Everybody's got to answer the 1.25 mile question. How much better do you feel about Chunk of Gold already having seen him finish a race going farther than most of these horses have?
I like it. I don't think distance will be an issue. I think trip will be more of the concern. He was a lot closer that last race than what we ever envisioned. The winner actually came from where we were wanting to be. But Jareth rode him perfectly, and he said he matured a lot between races, and he came back into the Louisiana Derby stronger and sharper than he was for the Risen Star. And it was a learning curve for all of us. And now that we know he can run that way, it's nice to have in our pocket. And so Jareth will be able to put him wherever throughout the trip, inside, outside, close, far off of it. We're not going to be pace dependent by any means.
It seems like even in the last few days, this pace has gotten a lot more potentially supersonic with the news of the second Japanese horse coming over with East Avenue qualifying. With that in mind, if you were to, and I'm asking you an unfair question here, but if you were to pick where you were to draw and where you might be in the early stages of the race from here, understanding it can change, what are you thinking?
I prefer the inside half of the field. If I had to pick a number, 6, 7, somewhere around in there, but I would rather have the 1 or the 2 hole than the 18 through 20 with him, just because I think he's a lot more focused under pressure down in on the rail, and then you don't have to worry about getting, being stuck wide or, using up or taking back. He should be able to break and run his own race early on.
I feel like that last run was even better than it looked on paper for that reason that you mentioned. When you can show more speed like that, still finish your race, and then lose to a horse that was coming as a deep closer, there's probably not too much, in my view, just as a horse player, between the top finishers in that race. I'm seeing him as a very live, long shot type horse. I mean, I don't expect the crowd is going to go nuts because there's so many different ways to go. It's the Kentucky Derby, but I mean, this horse, I mean, still the sky's the limit in terms of the ceiling, and obviously that's got to be the way you see it as the guy calling the shots.
Oh, absolutely. I've never been in this situation. It's awesome, and everybody keeps calling us the underdog. But the horse he stepped up to the plate every time, and he's answered questions, and now we just need it one more time.
Is it something special and fun about having Jareth Loveberry? You mentioned that your families have connections going way back. Being on this journey with him, does that mean something to you?
Oh, it's cool. It's an exciting ride, and even cooler to do it with friends.
Great stuff, my friend. Ethan, Godspeed to you. Godspeed to Chunk of Gold.
So I appreciate all that, and a little bit of luck, and we'll be all right.
PTF here once again on the In the Money Media YouTube channel, and also the audio version. When all these videos go up, we're going to do a long audio version. That's the True Monster Pod. That's where it got the name. These are really mini pods, if I'm being honest about it. But lots of audio-only content for you YouTube folks if you want to subscribe to the In the Money Players podcast, wherever you get your audio. One of the people you'll hear on there and also read on our website from time to time. Young man, I've been very impressed with the sharpness of his opinions, both on our airwaves and on his own show, which we'll make him talk about for a minute too. Jackson Muniz. Jackson, how are things, bud?
Doing good, man. Appreciate the kind words and ready to talk some Derby. It's that time of year. It's getting very exciting.
Let's do it. Final Gambit is the subject of this video. We've seen horses take this synthetic route to the Derby with success before. Give us an overview of Final Gambit's credentials before we get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, you talked about, I mean, the last 3 or 4 years, the likes of Rich Strike and Two Phils have taken this route to the Derby and have had some success. So this isn't unprecedented territory for this horse. Lightly raced, very lightly raced. I like these type of horses though that, he was third first time out, then he was second, then first, and then they stepped up in the stakes company and he won with he won the Jeff Ruby Stakes. I mean, these improving types are the ones that you like because you don't really know where their ceiling is necessarily. They always keep improving. So he's a horse that at Turfway, again, he continues to get better and better with each start. He comes from way out of it. So I think his race 2 back, it was a complete bog that day. And he was coming around the turn. He's not even on the screen. And they come around the quarter pole, and he's way back there. He has a tremendous turn of foot. He showed it in the maiden breaker when he got up. Now, the number didn't come back that great. It was only 64 on the buyer. I believe it's about a 90 on the time form, which is about a 70 equivalent. So it was quite slow. And that was why I was kind of against him in the Jeff Ruby Stakes. But he got a great setup that day. They went so fast. I very rarely see first opening quarters under 23 seconds. That's what happened in that race. He did the exact same thing. He came from way out of it. And again, the quarter pole, he's still way out of the race. And he comes flying. And he won that race very, very easily in the end. It's not like he was one of these closers that, got a great setup and just got up the wire. He was 3 or 4 lengths clear and galloped out with a ton of energy. I have no doubts he's going to love the 1.25 mile. It just, the big question, obviously, is the surface.
Yes, that's what my next question was going to be. At a glance, you see not this times they run on anything, but certainly no issue on dirt. And a Tappet Dam gives you hope at a base level that the horse is going to be able to adapt to dirt. I know you've done some digging into the pedigree. What did you find?
Yeah, pedigree seems like it'll be okay. You mentioned the Tappet on the Dam side. The Dam never tried the dirt, but the one sibling has both of his victories have come over the dirt, so you'd think it'd be okay. He's working over there at Churchill Downs right now. I think they're going to decide and see how he does. He actually worked this morning. Haven't been able to find any videos on it yet. Hopefully it'll be up pretty soon because I do like watching those and getting a sense of how he's training over it. So keep an eye out on that. I'm sure as we get closer and closer to the Derby, there'll be plenty of videos and you can see how he's training on the dirt. Obviously, trust Brad Cox to. That was the big question. I read an article they were saying they're going to leave it up to Brad. He's going to decide if he's handling it well or not. A couple other quick points about this horse. I did read it in the most recent race. Machado, who rode him in that race, interestingly said that he didn't think the horse is as good going in between horses. He wanted to park him really wide in that race because he doesn't think he tries as hard going in between horses, which would be a bit of concern in a 20 horse field when you're going to have to go from dead last and you're going to be 10 wide around the final turn. That's a bit of a concern. If you are a believer that the buyer only came back 90 for the Jeff Ruby, but the time form came back at 118, which is about a 98 equivalent, which, I mean, if you're comparing to the Bluegrass or the Florida Derby or the Louisiana Derby, I mean, that puts him right there with the winners of those races. Obviously, that came on the PETA service, and he has to translate it to the dirt. But for a horse, it's going to be at least 20 or 30 to 1. I would have to think that's not a bad way to go.
You said a few things I wanted to follow up on before I ask you the key question. You talked about the between horses thing, certainly a concern. A draw video and analyzing the draw, one of the things we're going to have for folks on the In the Money Media YouTube channel after it happens, obviously. We will also be talking about the workouts specifically here. You're going to get that information in a lot of places, but we're not going to be left out of the party. If you want all this type of information, just go ahead and subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel. Also, while you're there and you're subscribing, click like on the videos if you're digging them, and let us know in the comments what you think about all this stuff. Key question, my friend, what's this horse's ceiling?
It feels like he's an unlikely horse to win. There's a lot of the major contenders in this race, and the Derby, it looks like, a couple weeks out, kind of have the similar running style where they want to come from way out of it. I don't think he's impossible. I think if he does show up in there, he's in there for a reason. It's because he can't handle the dirt. And at a giant price in the race that pretty much always kind of falls apart, I would definitely be considering him to use in third and fourth and filling out those exotics.
I'll tell you what, the Bluegrass Stakes result gives me more hope about a runner like this with this running style, with East Avenue getting in and going to provide another one-way horse. Sometimes even when there's so much speed in the Derby, if they're worried about the mile and a quarter, etc., you can see horses grab and a Medina Spirit go out there and do his thing. But might be enough pace to consider a plotting type like this. In any case, Jackson, tell us where folks can get more of you.
Yeah, obviously be over in the Money channel on YouTube and on Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. Over on YouTube as well, we'll be on the Gallop Out, and we're on there twice a week. We're not on this week, but usually we're going to be on twice a week. And then HHA Racing Podcast as well on Tuesdays.
Good stuff. Always a pleasure having you, my friend. We'll be talking soon.
Thanks, Pete.
Next up on the 2025 Kentucky Derby Monster Pod, very proud to bring in a man who is one of the many contributors who does such a great job for us over at inthemoneypodcast.com, providing top-level analysis for free. And one of those excellent ideas he gave was back in the Virginia Derby in the middle of March when he told you that American Promise was going to win. All American Promise did was go and justify that with a score at 7-1. But that was then. This is now. Want to hear what Michael Domabyl thinks about American Promise. Michael, give us an overview of this horse before we get into his particulars regarding the Derby.
Yeah, this is a big chestnut colt. He's 17 hands and growing, as Dwayne Lucas said. Justify out of a Tappet mare, so the pedigree is all there. It'll be Dwayne Lucas's 51st starter in the Kentucky Derby. 44 years from his first one.
Amazing,
absolutely amazing. So from that perspective, it's awesome to see him in the Kentucky Derby. And while it's Dwayne Lucas's 51st starter, it'll be rider Nick Juarez's first mount in the Kentucky Derby. So the two ends of the spectrum there coming together for this colt.
That's fantastic. What a great overview. He took a while to break his maiden, but once he did, seemed to establish himself at a new level of form. When did you first become aware of this horse?
Yeah, definitely his maiden win. When maiden wins come back with buyers in the mid 90s, it's always worth taking note. And then I was kind of always following him pretty closely. I noticed he had a couple subtle trips in the two prep races that ahead of the Virginia Derby. So I one of the keys for him is just trying to keep his face clean during races. So I would envision his best chance in the Kentucky Derby would be drawing outside and kind of getting that stalking trip, kind of the American Pharaoh trip where you're three wide around the turn and let that stamina come into play versus trying to weave in and eat dirt for a lot of the race.
Never easy. One of my colleagues in the UK on Sky Sports Racing the other day said a phrase I swore I was going to steal, and I'll start here. Clean faces win races.
Yeah, I heard that late night on FanDuel TV as well, in a Charlestown call. So
that's where it was
spreading.
from. He was citing the Charlestown caller,
yeah,
who I wish I could even name check, but I don't know the name to check. Well, you gave the scenario for American Promise to do well in the Kentucky Derby, but as the man who correctly prognosticated his win in Virginia, do you think? I mean, how likely do you think that is? Is this horse going to be a key for you in Louisville?
I think one of the good things about this horse is I'll know with the draw and how I design the race whether I would want to use him. If he's kind of in that like 14 and out post position, drawn outside the other speeds, that's a situation where I would want to key him underneath and maybe have him as a backup in pick 5 tickets. But if he's drawn on the inside, I think it's going to be an uphill battle. Because you can kind of look at some of his races where he didn't run so well. Those were when he was in behind horses, didn't get out in the clear. And he has a little bit of a penchant for breaking a little bit slow. So and that in the Kentucky Derby can spell doom. So drawn outside and with a clean break, he's definitely got a chance to hit the board.
Okay, you're talking about hitting the board. I've heard you say that a couple of times, but we need to ask you the key question. What is this horse's ceiling? Is that it?
I think his ceiling is kind of in that 2nd through 4th positions. I don't think, as much as I would love to see the Virginia Derby produce a Kentucky Derby winner in the first year of it switching to dirt and being a key prep race on the road to the first Saturday in May, I think his ceiling is kind of in that second to 4th rungs on the ladder. He'll need to take a step forward into the triple-digit buyers to win, and I think he's kind of tops out in the mid to high 90s.
I suppose that attitude might change if some of the other key speed runners that we're examining now decide not to participate. I mean, how important is it who lines up against him, regardless of what draw he gets?
Yeah, I think speed is always looking at the pace is always important for the Kentucky Derby, but when you have 20 horses that get in the gate, it always seems like 1 or 2 that you weren't expecting quarter horse out of there and try to get good position. So we always kind of hear rumblings of maybe this is the year that there's going to be a 47 half in the Kentucky Derby, but I'll believe it when I see it when there's 20 horses lined up.
Great stuff, Michael. Appreciate you. We'll continue to check out your fantastic work on inthemoneypodcast.com and want folks to subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel. Loads of great content on there. And while you're over there, please subscribe and throw this video a like as well. The Monster Pods get better when we get to check in with old friends. That's certainly the case here with TV's Matt Bernier. When I asked him about this a few days ago before the Bluegrass, he said, well, I really want to do Burnham Square, but we should probably wait and see how he runs in the Bluegrass. After the Bluegrass, I texted him, Burnham Square, let's go. What is it about this horse, Matt B., that made you want to talk about him even before the last run?
He is a distance runner through and through. There's no two ways around it. Ian Wilkes has said it before, and you just watch the way that he moves. It seems like the added real estate for the first Saturday in May is only going to be his friend, which you can't say about everyone else in this field. He does need to improve. He's a little bit light on numbers, but as we are so accustomed to, the pace is probably going to be a barbecue early on. He should come with a run at the end.
Yes, the horse that set the pace in the Bluegrass, apparently coming back to run in the Derby, useful. In the hands of Ian Wilkes. That's one of the things that makes me particularly interested about this horse. Looking back to the Fountain of Youth, did you conjure an excuse for him there? I kept coming back to the idea that on the Wilkes program, maybe that was back a little bit quick.
My concern is not so much that, while I do factor that in. My bigger concern is that this horse is still not really put it all together mentally, and it's a bit of a dicey proposition going into the Kentucky Derby. But you know, you saw him a little bit better in the Bluegrass, but even Brian Hernandez afterwards said going into the first turn down the backside, he was kind of resenting the kickback. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, that's going to be a problem in a few weeks because you're going to have a lot of kickback in front of you. So I think he is still a mental work in progress, which may not bode well for 19 other horses and 170,000 people. But again, if the great equalizer is the distance and being able to get that, and he is one of the few that I have no reservations about.
Let's talk about Ian Wilkes for another minute. For the uninitiated, tell us a little bit about where he comes from, what his training style is.
Yeah, I mean, longtime assistant for Carl Nafsker. Obviously, we know they had great Derby success, and Ian himself, while he hasn't had a Kentucky Derby winner, I believe he's only had one other runner. That was McCracken a number of years ago, who, based on breeding, was never going to get the mile and a quarter. But again, this is an outfit that they know how to win big races. Think back to Fort Larned winning the Breeders' Cup Classic and the Whitney all those years ago. So being on the big stage is not anything new for them. I appreciate the way that Ian goes about his business because he's not going to sugarcoat things. He did an interview with Kate and Bradar after the Fountain of Youth, I believe it was. And he said, look, this horse, it's time to put his big boy pants on. There's only so much we can do in the morning. He's just going to have to really start to learn and put it together. And I think he took a little step forward in the bluegrass. But again, I'm not fully ready to say that he's a slam dunk sure thing, especially when you got a horse like Journalism.
Oh, yeah. I mean, main dangers was one of my questions for you. But, you know, in horse racing, there are closers and then there are closers. In this 20-horse Derby, where do you want to see Burnham Square positioned, like, a little bit more precisely?
Boy, I have to be honest, and this is a little bit, near and dear to me. I'm kind of thinking Orb. I mean, he's going to be out the back. He's going to be out run early on. The big thing is going to be, can Brian get him out into the clear, out of that kickback that apparently he doesn't love, and start to warm up on the far turn? That's when this horse really has started to do his best work. And to your point, Pete, the only time this year that he didn't do that was in the Fountain of Youth. It seemed like he just kind of threw it into neutral around the far turn before rallying again down the center of the track. He was better about it in the bluegrass. Obviously, he was good about it in the Holy Bull, and you have to hope he's good about it in about 4 weeks' time.
I love you and I on a podcast talking about Orb. Shades of 10 years ago when we launched the world's longest running horse racing podcast. It's evolved into this In the Money Media YouTube channel, the Old Players Pod. Great stuff, Matt. Let's talk about how important the workouts are going to be for Burnham Square. How much stock are you going to put in what you see and hear about what goes on in the mornings in terms of making your final answers here?
Yeah, I think it's important. Yeah, I'm not someone who is sitting there. I know there's always that one horse every year that just kind of touts themselves going over the Churchill main track. I'm more of the opinion that don't look like a disaster out there. Don't get out there and lose your race before it's even begun. The good news is this is a horse that has run well at Churchill Downs in the past. Go back to his last run as a 2-year-old. He's shown that racetrack's not going to be an issue for him. And again, I go back to the idea, not only is he a stamina-oriented type, that stretch run at Churchill Downs is only going to be his friend. And I know that's going to be the undoing of the vast majority of the field, frankly, because how many of them truly want to go that far? So the key is going to be, does he get some pace? Does he get the trip? And more importantly, is he going to kind of mentally have it all together there? That's a big ask with 150,000 people that he's going to have to be dealing with hooting and hollering. But I think he's the kind of horse that I like to have a little bit of a flyer on. I feel like I'm pot committed. I've been on his bandwagon before the Holy Bull, so I don't know that I can jump off now. But
no.
He's very interesting. And the one other thing I'll say, Pete, his pedigree, mom is all grass. So it's not totally crazy to hear that he may resent the kickback. I'm not telling you that down the road he's going to end up on the turf, but it wouldn't stun me if at some point, let's say this doesn't go the way that the connections hope it would, that maybe you see him on the grass over the summer at some point.
Really fast, main dangers, and what price would you like to get on this horse?
Oh, I mean, journalism. The race goes through journalism. I'm of the opinion that it's his race to lose in a way. I think he's probably 5-2. As far as Burnham Square is concerned, I think he's going to be shorter than this, which is unappealing. I would say 15s would be kind of the target number, and I could see him getting into the high single digits.
All right, great stuff from Matt. Check him out. And, loads of coverage coming up from you on Keeneland for your home team over there. And if you want even more coverage of the Kentucky Derby, check out the In the Money Plus service. We got a whole Derby package, lots of extra content there. inthemoneypodcast.com/plus to learn more. Matt, thank you so much.
See you, buddy.
PTF, In the Money Media YouTube channel and Players Podcast. We kick off the Monster Pod in style for the 2025 Kentucky Derby, bringing in one of our most popular guests ever. Whenever we have this man on talking horses, you can't seem to get enough. Neither can I. Professional horse player, Duke Matties. Duke, how are things?
Hey, Pete. It's good to be back with you. I heard we're all gonna survive, so that's good.
That's the plan. That's the plan as it stands now, my friend. Surviving this 2025 Derby may be another matter. We're talking about a horse here who right now is in the picture, 20th on the points list. We're recording this before the Bluegrass, so that situation could change. I think he's got a very reasonable shot of getting in. If he doesn't get in the Derby, he's certainly going to be in some big races and is worthy of discussion. We are talking about this John Sheriff's trainee, Baeza. Very, very good, I thought, in the Santa Anita Derby, just going down late to the very impressive, going to be the favorite. Journalism in the spot. Tell me, I gave you the pick of who you wanted to talk about. Why did you choose Baeza?
I chose Baeza because I think Baeza is he's like the now horse. He's really, really coming into himself, and I knew he was going to run huge in the Santa Anita Derby. I was really, really I singled him in almost everything, which is crazy because I can't believe he went off 14-1. We had that race, that maiden special weight race, is a really, really quick race back in February, and he's got all the braiding. I mean, he's out of a mare that's had a Derby winner in Mage. He's had a Travers winner in what the heck's the name of the horse? Dornoch. Yeah, Dornoch, who Jayson owns, Jayson Werth. So I mean, he just has all the right stuff. John Sheriff's is always very patient with these horses, and for him to have that horse already cranked up this far, I think Derby Day, you could really, really see something special here.
I love the sound of it. You say you knew he was going to run well. Looking at his PP cut, what made you think that? What were you seeing in there other than the fact that maiden race was fast?
Well, he did it in a way where even I wrote as my comment, I said, really nice effort, had more. He had even more. Like he won like a horse that you knew he could have won by 10 easily. So right. I like that going longer. I like that when they're going to go 1.1 miles, and distance isn't going to be a problem with him, like we talked about. I mean, Mage won the Derby, and Dornoch won, the
Belmont and the Travers. I mean,
Belmont and the Travers.
How'd you like to own that dam, by the way? A couple of classic winners, and then an interesting runner to maybe get a third one 3 years in a row. Talk about a blue hen.
I know, she's amazing, right? I mean, she's got to be worth a fortune. I guarantee what those guys probably aren't looking to sell her; they're just looking to breed her. So get more of them. Anyway, I just really, really, really liked the way he was coming into the race. I knew Journalism would be tough, and Citizen Bull would also be tough. And I just thought, hey, I'm not going to get another chance at 14-1 to single a horse like this. So he's lightly raced. He's only got 4 races, which I think is a good thing for the Triple Crown. If you're going to win it, it seems like that's the formula for the last few Triple Crown winners. Justified was very lightly raced, and I think this horse has got that similar type of form and similar type of running style, and I think he's the real deal.
Let's talk about him vis-a-vis Journalism specifically. Do you see a specific reason watching back that race why Baeza would reverse form with Journalism, or is it just the case that once again Baeza will be a multiple of Journalism's price should they line up in the gate against one another?
No, I thought he ran just as good, and I think anybody that watches races like this, people get caught up with the horse that kind of waits and gets in trouble. But I think that helped Journalism in this case, because the way the pace scenario went and the way Baeza moved wide and moved early, you won't see that next time. I mean, they're not gonna get caught up moving early in a Kentucky Derby. They're gonna wait a little bit, and hopefully they draw good posts. I mean, you never know. You could draw 20 and get stuck, 6 wide in the first turn, and your race is over. But we got to hope that we draw something where we can fall into a spot. And Hector Berrios is, I assume he's going to ride it. I don't know that for sure, but I assume he's going to ride it in the Derby. He's a very patient guy. So for him to move early like that was kind of surprising for me. And I think you'll see I think you'll see a little bit different tactic in the Derby.
I wonder if the short field, the need to get points, if those sort of tactical matters were playing into his head. He had the de facto pace setter, I suppose, with his stablemate, but that one wasn't gonna. It actually did really well to hang around for third, but you knew that one was starting to gas out, and it seemed like the horse was just getting aggressive. But in the end, you do have a move that I know horse players like yourself like, that move, the early move into that fast pace, sometimes that can be better than the horse who was going well in the last 100 yards, especially if, as you're surmising, there's going to be a very different pace scenario in the Kentucky Derby with the big full field, maybe a chance to sit and do even better making the one run. His figure pattern on Beyer right now, I'll start with the first race and go through the fourth. 60, 87, 93, 101. What do you imagine would be next in that progression? I mean, are you confident he'll be able to run another top with a more efficiently run race? Or do you think a 101 itself might be enough to be heard from?
Well, I mean, if you look at the past, like 4 derbies, I mean, excluding, I think there's one that was a little bit quick. None of them have run much more than that figure.
Right.
You know, so we're talking about horses that don't really have to improve. Baeza and Journalism are already there. I think last year, Paul and I had the speed figure for the Kentucky Derby under 100. You know, so 101 is solid, and not only that, I think he's better than that. I think he's going in the right direction, like you said. I love horses that are going 80. We have 86, 94, 100. You know, I think he's improving like 6 points every time. 106, he should be favored. You know what I mean? If you think he's going to run 106. So, and I think Journalism is a possibility. He's already hit the top. I'm hoping, you know, that's what you hope for, right? Like if you're a little bit against him, he's already gotten 100 twice. So why not? Why not go for Baeza? I mean, you're going to get, like you said, triple the price. Who knows what you'll get in the Derby? You could get 20-1 maybe.
I want to bring Rodriguez into the conversation because he allowed to use his speed, got the job done in the Wood, also ran a triple-digit figure on Beyer, and he's got Baeza on the form book as well. In terms of Baeza's ability to reverse form with him, is it simply a matter of more maturity? That wasn't the same Baeza back there on January 4th as you expect to see on the first Saturday in May?
Well, yes. And also, I believe that track was that day, that maiden special race. I have that track as a huge speed favoring track. No, I didn't have the Wood Memorial Day as a big speed favoring track. So that's interesting that he could be improving too. So he's definitely a horse I'm interested in keeping an eye on him. He might have really stepped up, Rodriguez. He might have stepped up in a big way. And that's Mr. Baffert. So, I mean, you know, he'll be geared up on Derby Day as well, because now I think he's lost a couple of these other ones like Citizen Bull. I assume Citizen Bull won't run, but maybe he will. I just don't think, even if he does.
Saying yes. I think they're saying yes right now, but we'll see. I'm sure the horse will tell them in subsequent weeks. It was not a good effort from the 2-year-old champion on Saturday. Could not beat the aforementioned maiden pace setter. Not a good race heading into the toughest challenge of your life. But I love the case you make for Baeza. I think he's fascinating. We're going to keep fingers crossed that he gets in. And because no good deed goes unpunished around here, Duke, we'd love to bring you back Derby week for some more thoughts.
100%. Yeah. I mean, no way I'd be running Citizen Bull in the Derby if I owned him, but I mean, I don't think he can. It doesn't seem like he's going the right way. So anyway, yeah, I think Baeza is going to be, let's put it this way. I think he'll hit the board. If he gets in, I think he'll hit the board. And then what else can you give out? I've been good luck on this Monster Pods. I've given out some winners on
Country here. House. If folks are
Country House was a pretty good one. Probably my last winner though. So I might need Baeza.
You can dine out on that one for a while, my friend. We'll be talking soon.
All right, sounds good.
The Kentucky Derby Monster Pod continues apace with an analysis of the horse who is your consensus favorite. His name is Journalism, so we have reached out to a journalist to talk about him. He comes to us from Fox Sports. He's Chris Fallica. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Yeah, good tie-in with the Journalism, and maybe this could be a horse that I will be sitting there at Saratoga on the Fox's Belmont coverage and maybe hoping for a Triple Crown.
Oh, you may have tipped your hand about how highly you regard this horse. He has impressed me ever since that maiden win, that first time going long back in his second career start. And he's done nothing but win since. That's certainly good. But how good are these wins?
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest question. I mean, you're looking at a horse that's beaten 12 horses in the last 3 races, and you're going to have obviously way more than that in the starting gate. But he's a horse that kind of makes his own trip, and he had a little bit of trouble, albeit it was a small field at Santa Anita. You can overcame that and won. I don't want to say going away, but he was much the best in that race. But I just like the style of the horse. He's someone look. I'm not a guy who wants to play these stone cold closers in the Derby. I'm not a guy who's going to want to play a horse that's on the lead the entire way. I think the stalking type trip is the way to go. And you're looking at a trainer that's got a Triple Crown win with Rombauer in the Preakness. And I guess if you want to be concerned about Umberto Rispoli, the jockey, having only 2 mounts in the Derby, and both of them have been hopeless long shots, but he's a good enough rider where he can kind of figure it out here. So I just think in terms of the way his figures are going, I think the best part about his Santa Anita Derby was it wasn't his best figure. It wasn't his best race. He ran great off the layup in the San Felipe, kind of regressed a little bit here. And now I think he's set up to run a career high for Saturday in May.
Yeah, I agree about the pattern. I mean, what was he going to do? Run another, 108?
Right.
And you'd have to wonder about 3 huge races in a row. It seemed like kind of the perfect effort to set him up for this big run. As you said, Michael McCarthy, I just trust him implicitly. He's won a Triple Crown race, not a Derby, but he's ready quite potentially to knock through. Couple of key questions.
And one of those about McCarthy too, not only the Preakness, a lot of times you'll see trainers when they ship to big graded stakes races throughout maybe their horses don't take to the track as well or ship as well. He's a guy that whether he ships to Oaklawn, whether he ships east, his horses always run well. And that just bodes, like even on the undercard of the Derby on Oaks Day and Derby Day, his horses always run well. So he's just a guy who this horse is going to be in the best possible shape on Derby Day.
That's a really interesting point. We talk sometimes about horses that seem to take their track with them. I'd never really thought about a trainer taking their track with them, but McCarthy, certainly somebody who qualifies with the scope of his operation and his ability to ship and win. 2 things I want to ask you about journalism. You talked about the short fields he's been facing. Now we have a 20-horse field, and you mentioned about the running style, how you like the fact that he has some tactical foot. He's not some plodding closer. 20 horses in the Derby, halfway through the race. Where do you want to see him positioned?
Probably 5th, maybe somewhere close to 4th or 5th, somewhere around there. You'll get some of those horses on the lead back. Like I think what happened in the Bluegrass was huge. With East Avenue going to be in the race now, probably that is going to ensure a fast pace for him, so he can kind of sit back a little bit, and you'll get a couple of other of those speed balls up front that will ultimately back up. But I think 5th would be a perfect spot for him to be.
Maybe the most important question of all when it comes to journalism: what price is acceptable in terms of making him a horse to key around, or have you made up your mind and it's journalism or bust at this point?
I think at this point for me, I'm absolutely going to be using him as a key. Like if you look at the recent Derbies, I mean, last year, obviously Fierceness ran terribly as the favorite. But before that, you had a 12-year run where you had 6 favorites win, 3 run second, and 2 other run third. So like putting him in your tries and your exactas in a single spot and try and key around him with some other prices, that's definitely the way to go for me. I would think in this field with no other real standout, but I think there are some horses in here that people probably would be looking to play, whether it's Sovereignty, whether people buy into Luxor Cafe. I mean, if there ever is a year where you want to like kind of take a chance on one of the foreign horses, it might be this year where they're really, if you're not sold on journalism and all these other horses seem like maybe they're closers, plotters, really haven't done a lot. Maybe you do, but at the same time, it could be a little bit of buyer beware because maybe a lot of people are thinking that because of what Forever Young did last year. Yeah. But I would expect him to be somewhere maybe in the maybe 7-2 range. I think probably is fair. I don't think anything shorter than 3-1. I think is definitely too short. But I would think 7-2 is probably right because I do think Sovereignty will take some play. I think you'll get probably some play on Tappan Street. Sandman will be a public horse that I'll be absolutely against in this race. But yeah, I think playing him in the exactas and the tries in a single spot, and then you excuse me, and then you play some pick 4s and pick 5s around that, and maybe you use a couple of horses on a wider spread ticket and you press him in the multi-race exotics a little bit more, and hopefully your 7-2 plays a little bit longer and you get some price horses in and around that. But there's really, I came into this Derby season really looking for someone who hadn't really run yet. I mean, I knew Sovereignty and Journalism were two horses that were going to get be appealing to a lot of people, and on paper, they certainly, the way they've run, certainly deserve that. So I was looking for horses that maybe hadn't broken maiden yet, hadn't even run. Like, look, I was loaded up on Cornucopia at 65 to 1, 55 to 1, 50 to 1, and excited after the maiden race. And then after the Arkansas Derby, I was a little bit down. So that kind of caused me to just reassess everything, and just looking at the preps and looking at the form of these horses afterwards, I'm like, this might just be a year where the favorite is the best horse, and just take what they're going to give you and kind of maybe work around that and try and find your prices around. But it looks like Journalism is going to be very hard to keep out of the money, if not win the race.
I love it, and leave it to you. I wouldn't dare challenge you at this point with coming up with actual betting strategy for the race this far out, but you can't help yourself. That's how sick you are.
And I think that was part, like, even with like a horse like Sandman, a horse like Burnham Square, I think is going to be another horse that people are going to be high. Oh, he closed. He might get but the way they crawled home in that race yesterday is kind of his home. Like, I can't get behind that horse winning the Derby. Can he get up and maybe finish 3rd or 4th? Sure. But I think there are a lot of suspect horses in behind Journalism. And the one that's going to need help, that might be a bigger threat to him, is the runner-up in the Santa Anita Derby, who needs help to get into the race. So if he gets in, I think he certainly is live to definitely crack the exacta, maybe even flip the again. John Sheriffs is another guy who his horses you want to back.
Baeza is certainly an interesting alternative, as are several of the others Chris mentioned. We're going to have videos on all of them. That's what these Monster Pods are all about. Make sure you subscribe to the In the Money YouTube channel. Click that notification bell. Like the videos while you're here as well. And drop us a comment. Let us know who you like in this year's Kentucky Derby. Chris, thank you so much.
You got it, bud.